Chapter 1275. The gathering of the Yellow River that ended in the 7th month of the Taoist calendar was still ongoing in the 8th month. The main reason was that the leader of the inner mansion of the Yellow River gathering was suspected of being in cahoots with the devil. This matter caused an uproar and involved Jing, Qi, Mu, Chu, Mount Yujing, and the Xiankong Temple. Zhao Xianyang of the Jing Kingdom captured Jiang Wang in Tianjiao. Then, Ji Zhaonan of the Qi Kingdom returned from the gate of 10,000 demons and demanded justice. Then, Chen Yugui suddenly appeared and fought with Ji Zhaonan. Qi's reaction pushed this matter to the climax and attracted the attention of the world. Chen Yugui and Ji Zhaonan fought in the Zhongshan Kingdom. Both parties fought with all their might and almost destroyed half the city. Then, they were stopped by the furious cultivators of the Zhongshan Kingdom. Everyone had different opinions about the outcome of this battle. In short, both sides retreated. However, after this battle, both Qi and Jing compensated the Zhongshan Kingdom with a considerable amount of resources. In comparison, not many people knew about the battle between Jing Country's disaster army commander Pei Xinghe and Qi Country's winter silent army commander Shi Mingqin in Chang'e 9 towns. There were no bystanders during the battle, and no one knew when it started and when it ended. The news that spread was also mostly vague. It was said that at the most intense moment of the battle, the Chang'e River stopped flowing for 3 breaths. However, no one knew if this was true or not. Furthermore, Ku Ju of the Xiankong Temple chased after Zhao Xianyang and rescued Jiang Wang. This was another hot topic, especially after 3 days of fruitless pursuit, and after the Xiankong Temple ordered him to return, he left the mountain and continued the pursuit. This made people reevaluate his relationship with Jiang Wang. Reincarnation, illegitimate child, rumors were spreading like wildfire. Speaking of which, in July and August, the eyes of countless vassal states in the modern world seemed to revolve around this prodigy named Jiang Wang. He was the center of attention of the world. No matter what the outcome was, he could be proud of himself. Following the intense confrontation of Qi, the matter of Jiang Wang being in cahoots with the devil had become a political issue in the world and was no longer an isolated matter of slaying the devil. Most people had reservations about whether or not he was able to channel magic. Compared to when Jing Country's Mirror World stage had just announced the news, there was naturally a huge change in the wind direction. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the credibility of the Mirror World platform. The Mirror World platform was surprisingly calm, and no one knew why. This aroused countless suspicions. No one doubted the strength of Jing Country. After all, forcing a perfected person of the present age to leave the sect in order to continue his pursuit was enough to show the deterrent power of Jing Country. If it was any other power, Ku Ju would have chased after him. Why would the Xiankong Temple spend so much effort to forcefully restrain him to the point of letting a perfected person escape? Thus, in the following days, the topic of conversation after meals was where the bitterness came from and how to measure it step by step. However, as time passed day after day, there was still no harvest. Everyone's gazes gradually faded away. Instead of paying attention to the boring journey of the yellow-faced old monk, it would be better to read Qi's letters of credence, which were more and more strictly worded than the previous one. Qi demanded that Tianjiao be returned to Jing Country, but Jing Country expressed that it would have to wait until after the trial at Mount Yujing. The Chu Kingdom continued to pay attention and hoped that Jing Country would complete the trial as soon as possible. Jing Country expressed that because of Ku Ju's pursuit, they could not contact Zhao Xianyang and could not escort Jiang Wang back to Mount Yujing. They asked their friend from the Chu Kingdom to think of a way to persuade Ku Ju to leave. Zhao Xianyang and Jiang Wang seemed to have disappeared from the world. One could not say that Ku Ju was stupid and only knew how to search. It was just that there were too many possibilities for them to disappear from the world. From the antiquity age until now, the secrets of the world were as vast as the sea of stars. How many secrets were hidden in this great world? How many legends were lost? No one knew all of them. If one did not have a deep understanding of Zhao Xianyang, it would be difficult to link him to the ancient Devil's Cave. After all, after the end of the Antiquity Age, it went through the Middle Age and the Near Age before the Taoist calendar was rebooted. Although Zhao Xianyang was only in the Shunlin stage, he was born in the Jing country and had seen many tricks up his sleeves. It was not strange for him to have one or two treasures on him that could hide from the detection of Taoists. There was no end to guessing, so he could only check one place at a time. Year 3919 of the Taoist calendar, August 19th. 4 days had passed since Ku Ju announced that he was leaving the Xiankong Temple. A great war broke out without any warning. The two sides of the war were not the Jing country and Qi country, whose diplomatic language was becoming more and more intense. It was the Shang country and the Mu country. The Mu country used Meng Wuya's rudeness to the Shang country on the river viewing platform as an excuse and used Wanyan Xionglu as their commander to mobilize the Yuturu cavalry and attack the Shang country's border city, Liyuan. Whether the two words Liyuan meant to leave the grasslands or to isolate the grasslands depended on one's opinion. But without a doubt, Liyuan City was the first majestic city with crouching tigers and coiling dragons in the southern direction of the boundless prairie. Since it was built, who knew how many grassland sons and daughters had bled in front of this city? In the eyes of the Shang country people, this time would not be an exception. In the language of the Mu country, Yuturu meant brave and fearless. However, compared to the Tsangta Divine Cavalry and Iron Stupa, which were among the top 10 cavalry armies in the world, Yuturu was simply a nameless cavalry army. The commander of Yuturu, Wanyan Xionglu, was famous for his bravery in the grasslands. However, in the world, he was overshadowed by famous generals like Jin Tandu. Outside of the grasslands, not many people knew about him. Jiang Ryong once said that the Mu country only had 3 armies: the Tsangta Divine Cavalry, the Iron Stupa, and the King's Tent Cavalry. In other words, he did not care about the other armies of the Mu country, even if the other party was one of the 6 superpowers and the overlord of the north. The strength and confidence of the Shang country was evident from this. Jiang Limeng, who represented the Shang country in the Battle of the Yellow River, was Jiang Ruyong's daughter. She was as arrogant as her father. The commander of the Jing country's Divine Will Army, Xian Nankue, once said that the Mu country only had 1 army, the Tsangta Divine Cavalry. The Shang country was backed by the Jing country and had fought with the Mu country many times. They were not weak at all. Under such circumstances, the Shang country's famous general, Qi Hong, was stationed in Liyuan City to resist the aggressive Wanyan Xionglu. Thus, a war between countries broke out. The Mu country and the Shang country had fought many times. Both sides were familiar with each other. After all, the Mu country was in the wilderness to the north. To the west was the extremely warlike Jing country. If they wanted to expand their influence, they could only do so in the central and eastern regions. As the number 1 Taoist country, the Shang country received large amounts of resources from the Taoist sect every year. Its main purpose was to suppress the Mu country. Both sides were like dry firewood in a raging fire. It was impossible for nothing to happen. Thus, for these two countries, war was unavoidable. For the people of these two countries, it was not strange for them to fight for no reason. However, in this world, it was not limited to one region. The influence of the 6 great overlords had already spread throughout the modern world. Their every move affected people's hearts. The Mu country's sudden war against the Shang country had a direct impact on the Mirror World platform. The matter of Jiang Wang's collusion with the devil could not be delayed any longer. The Jing country had to settle its dispute with the Qi country immediately. There was only one core reason why the Shang country could fight back and forth with the Mu country, and that was the Jing country's support. Public opinion, deterrence, military equipment, resources, even military force when necessary. The war between Mu and Shang was actually a war between Mu and Jing. Other than that, the Jing country's wariness in the west and the wilderness in the north could only be considered as side reasons. How could the 6 great overlords be considered strong? Even if the overlords only had one hand, They could easily crush any country that was not in the six great overlords. The Shang country was strong and could not be an exception. If the Mu country's attack on Liyuan City was premeditated, then their harsh statement on the matter of Qi's collusion with the devil in Tianjiao was undoubtedly a friendly gesture on a national level. The Jing country had to consider a question. If the Mu country had surrendered to the Mu country, would the Qi country repay Qiangyao? From Jijiaonan to Shimingqin, the Qi country's attitude was unyielding. Would the Qi country dare to take advantage of the war between Mu and Shang country? Once the Qi country started the war, would the Mu country be satisfied with only sending Yuturu to make a small fuss? This was a whirlpool that was likely to get deeper and deeper. Thus, no matter how the matter of Jiang Wan's collusion with the devil was dealt with, there had to be an immediate outcome. I felt that Zhao Xinyang could not escape because of the pursuit. In order to prevent the person who colluded with the devil from being taken away, I acted on justice and killed him. Zhao Xuanyang's heart was pitiful and his heart of justice was firm, but his actions were flawed after all. He was punished to go to the door of 1,000 demons to atone for his sins. This could be considered as an explanation to the Qi country. Flying high in the sky, a voice was transmitted through the strong wind. What do you think of this explanation? The person who spoke was a tall and thin man, wearing a loose Taoist robe with big sleeves fluttering in the wind. He looked like a middle-aged man, but his eyes were as bright as mirrors and his face was radiant. The person flying next to him was a tall and strong man with dark skin and a strong body. His voice was rough. It makes sense, but Xianyang has been wronged. As for the Jingtian prefecture, who said he would go? This person was the infamous perfected person of the Jing country, Chotai. In his early years, he was the vanguard in every battle. If he won, he had to climb first, and if he lost, he had to cut off the retreat. He fought on the battlefield until he reached the level of a god. Later, he removed his armor and returned to the fields. One person, one house, and one place, he lived in seclusion for 70 years. He washed away his murderous nature and became a perfected person of the present age. The person talking to him was naturally the leader of the Jing country's mirror world stage, Fu Dongshu. Fu Dongshu smiled. Of course, Zhao Xianyang will be satisfied. Then, I'll ask him to talk to you himself. Chotai also smiled. Then you should be prepared to bleed. That kid's appetite isn't easy to satisfy. There's public funds, Fu Dongshu said. Since Ku Ju has no sense of propriety and forced Zhao Xianyang to kill Jiang Wang in order to escape, how do you want to deal with him? Chotai asked. Fu Dongshu only asked in return, why do you think I invited you here? Then let's make Zhao Xianyang reveal his tracks first. No matter what, Ku Ju has to find him before he can wear this hat. Of course. But what Fu Dongshu and Chotai didn't expect was, not only was Ku Ju unable to track down Zhao Xianyang, but even they couldn't contact him. The message that was specifically left for Zhao Xianyang in the Qiantian mirror was never read again. Even if it was to avoid Ku Ju, even if he didn't dare to reveal even the slightest trace, this shouldn't be the case. Avoiding pursuit wasn't something that could be solved by digging a hole and burying oneself in it. Zhao Xianyang couldn't possibly hide in some place until the end of time. He also needed to obtain information about the outside world before he could decide on his next move. And reading the message in the Qiantian mirror was very safe and efficient. As one of the national treasures of the Jing Kingdom and the core treasure of the mirror world stage, the Qiantian mirror had been in operation for a long time without any flaws. With Zhao Xuanyang's strength, no matter where he hid, he could spend 2 or 3 breaths of time to read the message and then continue hiding. Unless he didn't need it anymore, or he couldn't. And Ku Ju's pursuit was still ongoing. Zhao Xianyang hadn't returned to the Jing Kingdom or Mount Yujing, so of course he needed it. Only then did the Jing Kingdom realize the seriousness of the problem. Not only did the Qi Tianjiao Jiang Wang disappear, their Jing Kingdom's Tianjiu Zhao Xianyang also disappeared. Who was Zhao Xianyang? The Jing Kingdom's Tianjiao twin walls. Before Taiyu Jinren appeared, he was one of the Jing Kingdom's flags. And he wasn't one of those Tianjiao who had yet to realize his potential. He was already in the Tianjiao stage and was one of the country's top fighters. With a lifespan of more than 500 years, he had more possibilities and more value. He wasn't without foundation. Even Fu Dongxiu didn't want to go to the Jingtian prefecture to communicate. If something happened to Zhao Xinyang, the losses would be too great and the trouble would be even greater. And so, a ban was put out. Within the range of the ban, everyone was silent. At this time, the Jing kingdom displayed its unparalleled influence in the modern world. With the last place Zhao Xinyang was last seen as the center, they sealed off almost 10,000 miles of land. They sent out Fu Dongxiu, Chou Tai, and Ji Yinwei, these three perfected masters, to search this area. They vowed to dig 3 feet into the ground to find Zhao Xinyang from Tianjiao. Fu Dongxiu and Chou Tai didn't need to be mentioned. Ji Yinwei was from the Jing kingdom's royal family. In terms of seniority, she was the aunt of the current Emperor Jing. Of course, in reality, they weren't that close by blood, but their importance didn't lose out to the previous two. The Tiamat Plateau faced the Long River to the south, the He Kingdom to the west, and the Rinxin building to the north. Looking east from south to north, there were the Wei Kingdom, the Wei Kingdom, and the Qingku Academy. Among these powers, the Qingku Academy and the Rinxin building were top-notch sections. Although the He Kingdom was small, it was able to act as the executor of the Jing Treaty of the Tiamat Plateau and even add its name to the agreement. Naturally, it had an extraordinary backing. The area that the Jing Kingdom sealed off was a huge area surrounded by the Tiamat Plateau, the Wei Kingdom, the Qingku Academy, and the Rinxin building. Of course, the boundary of the blockade was the boundary of the Qingku Academy and the Rinxin building's influence. It gave the top-notch sects the necessary respect. As for the other powers in this area, they didn't receive such good treatment. The Jing Kingdom had to search through all of them to find Zhao Xinyang. In a Taoist temple in the Jingtian prefecture, 6 prayer mats were carved from stone, and 6 Taoist priests were clay sculptures. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew over. One of the clay sculptures said, "This time I'll go. I don't think it's appropriate." A strange-looking sculpture immediately said. The clay sculpture that spoke first didn't say anything. It only twisted its neck strangely and stared straight at him. The clay sculpture's neck twisted as if it was broken. It made people worry that it might fall off. A clay sculpture actually expressed the feeling of, "I'm in a bad mood. If you want to go, then go. I'm not tying you up." The strange-looking sculpture continued, and then firmly shut its mouth. Chapter 1276. In the area that the Jing Kingdom had set up, there were many powers scattered around. Some had good reputations, while others had bad reputations. But there were no powers that were particularly noteworthy, especially for the Jing Kingdom. Fu Dongxiu, Chou Tai, and Ji Yinwei, the 3 Zenrins of the present age, split into 3 different directions to search. The Mirror World stage had also sent out a large number of people. Within 3 days, no one was allowed to leave the restricted area. Fu Dongxiu was exploring in the wilderness when he encountered the bitter feeling that came head-on. At this moment, Fu Dongxiu's sleeves were fluttering in the wind. After all, there was a lot of pressure on his shoulders and his heart. Searching everywhere was a tough job. Even if he was a Zhenren of the present age, he could not help but feel tired. Today, he had to admit that. The Mirror World stage's decision to lead Jiang Wang to communicate with the demons was too rash. Jiang Wang's forced departure from the Qi dynasty was a great opportunity. After the Battle of the Yellow River, Zhuang Gaoxian, who had been keeping an eye on Jiang Wang, saw this opportunity and immediately threw in his chips. Because of the prestige of the Qi dynasty, Zhuang Gaoxian did not dare to personally kill Jiang Wang. Furthermore, as the ruler of the Qi dynasty, he could not be like the other Zenrins who had nothing to worry about. Hence, he turned to Mount Yujing. When this was a great opportunity to knock Qi down, Zhuang Ting had ambiguous evidence that could confuse the public. He was also willing to pay a huge price. The Mirror World stage was actually just going with the flow. They sent a team of Outer Tower elites to secretly take down Jiang Wang and escort him to Mount Yujing. This should have been a simple task. However, The 4 outer tower elites from the anti-evil army were killed by Jiang Wang alone. On one hand, the anti-evil army's losses had to be compensated. On the other hand, Mount Yujing and the Mirror World stage did not want to give up halfway. On the other hand, Jiang Wang's value was greater than before. Correspondingly, it was even more necessary to kill him. Hence, Zhao Xinyang acted decisively. What was even more surprising was that Zhao Xinyang had personally taken action and used divine advent to track down the inner mansion, yet it still took him more than a day to catch him. Qi's side was also puzzling. A few days ago, the rumor that Jiang Wang colluded with the Pingding state to betray Qi was still raging. Unexpectedly, it was suppressed in the blink of an eye. What was even more inconceivable was Qi actually dared to stand up against Jingguo for the sake of a Tianjiao that had almost escaped from Qi. Fu Dongshu also realized that he had underestimated Jiang Wang's power and influence in the kingdom of Qi. The recent changes in the kingdom of Qi were not as simple as what an outsider like him had seen. The Qi emperor must have a more far-reaching plan. When Jiang Wang left the realm to wander, he was more like jumping out of the whirlpool than fleeing for his life. It wasn't just a miscalculation. He even misjudged Jiang Wang's strength. Little by little, the stakes increased bit by bit, turning into an extremely complicated situation. At this point, Fu Dongshu was no longer satisfied with just killing off a Qi Tianjiao. He had sacrificed more, and he had to ask for more. At this moment, Fu Dongshu looked tired and didn't want to leave the mortal world. The yellow-faced old monk also, well, he had never left the mortal world. The travel-worn yellow-faced old monk met Fu Dongshu face to face. Without saying a word, he turned around and left. "Stop!" Fu Dongshu shouted. He stepped in front of him and said sternly, "Master Ku Ju, I already told you to leave this area, didn't I? I'm not joking with you, and I'm not just saying that for show." With Ku Ju's bad temper, he was about to curse, but after thinking about it, he swallowed it back down. Looking at Fu Dongshu, his old face bloomed with a smile of seeing an old friend. "The sealed area is too big. I'm afraid that you won't be able to find it, so I'll help you." Fu Dongshu still didn't have a good expression on his face. This person was arrogant in the past and respectful in the future. "I've already said what I should say. You'd better leave on your own." He warned, "I'm not in the mood to deal with you now, but it doesn't mean that I can continue to tolerate you." "What's there to tolerate? Aren't you treating me like an outsider?" Ku Ju lightly hit Fu Dongshu's sleeve and complained intimately, "Now you're looking for someone, and I'm also looking for someone. Aren't we walking the same path?" For some reason, Fu Dongshu felt that this Ku Ju was more infuriating than the Ku Ju who pointed at his nose and scolded him. He said coldly, "I've already given you enough face." Ku Ju blinked innocently. "Give me a little more." Fu Dongshu wanted to shout and call Chotai and Ji Yinhue over to get rid of this old monk on the spot. However, as the leader of the Mirror World platform, he had too many things to consider. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "I'll make a deal with you." "First, yes, yes, yes." Ku Ju nodded repeatedly. "I agree." He agreed without even listening. It was obvious that he was fully prepared to go back on his words. However, Fu Dongshu still endured and said, "You're not allowed to leave me and act alone." "That's good." Ku Ju smiled and said, "I'm also tired of looking for someone by myself. I especially trust the information from the Mirror World platform." Fu Dongshu realized that no matter what he said, Ku Ju would be able to respond. Furthermore, for every sentence he said, Ku Ju would reply with 10 sentences. He decided not to talk anymore and started to explore. In the entire Forbidden Area, the places with the least people were the Wushidu mountain range and the dense forest after the wind. The former was a group of volcanoes. The origin of its name was no longer reliable. No one knew the meaning of these 3 words or which language it came from. In short, it was a name passed down from old people. Perhaps it had already been corrupted. There were more rumors about the latter. The most interesting one was that during the era of Shinto, there was a strong person who used the wind to become a god. She was called the Empress of the Wind. It was said that after she died, she was buried here. The endless dense forest was used as her burial ground. Hence, it was called the dense forest after the wind. Of course, this legend had no basis. No one had ever heard of anyone actually exploring the dense forest after the wind. It was just that over the years, it had become a custom to call him that. After many fruitless explorations, Fu Dongshu came to the dense forest after the wind, with Ku Ju being a burden. It wasn't accurate to say that he was a burden. After all, Ku Ju was also helping to search very seriously. This burden mainly referred to what Ku Ju would do after finding Zhao Xianyang and Jiang Wan. However, Chotai and Jianwei were both in this area, so Fu Dongshu wasn't too worried. At least for now, the two present-age perfected masters had the same request. They each stood on one side and were using their divine senses to scan the area. Suddenly, there was a loud noise. It was as if the entire dense forest after the wind shook. The two present-age perfected masters weren't afraid. They rose into the air and looked toward the source of the earthquake. About 3 li away from them, a large tree was suddenly uprooted. It was like an old farmer who was transplanting rice seedlings. It pulled out its legs from the soil, 2 extraordinarily thick roots. In the middle of the big tree, the bark cracked and human-like facial features appeared. Suddenly, a loud shout startled the birds and the tree. "Where is Fu Dongshu?" Both of them have subscribed to 9,000 copies. Writing novels is a job that drains one's mind. Readers who want to read pirated versions can also come to Chidian Chinese Network to support the original version and try to get the Wan Ding badge for the Red Heart Survey, if you have the energy to spare. Other children already have it. We're the only ones left. Chapter 1277. Fu Dongshu was still a little vigilant, but when he saw the giant tree transform and heard the voice, he relaxed. He took a step forward in the air. Fu Dongshu is here. The tall giant tree suddenly turned around. Bang, bang, bang. It stomped on the ground with an earth-shattering momentum. This Nanwu, so many Buddhas scared me. Kuju sneakily hid behind Fu Dongshu and muttered, "Who's this old guy? Why isn't he giving you face? I'm not looking for trouble, but in Shinkong Temple, no one dares to speak to me like this." Fu Dongshu ignored him and took a few steps forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Old man." The tree man lowered his head and looked at Fu Dongshu for a while. There was no emotion in his green eyes. Fu Dongshu did not retract his cupped hands. After a while, the tree man split open from the middle. A tall old man with white hair and a youthful face walked out. It looked like he had pushed open an inward-facing, semicircular door and walked out of his house. The tree man stood in place, as if it had really become a tree house. It was empty inside. Kuju did not immediately fan the flames because in this situation, it was obvious that he did not need to fan the flames. The white-haired old man with a strange way of descending walked in front of Fu Dongshu and looked at him. Then he said, "I'm quite old. I'm so old that no one remembers me." "You must be joking," Fu Dongshu said. "Who wouldn't remember someone as prestigious as you?" The attitude of the leader of the Mirror World platform was obviously very different. He even bowed as a junior. It could be seen that this person's seniority was extremely high and his status in the Jing Kingdom system was extraordinary. Is that so? The white-haired old man was still looking at him. Then how could someone casually order my disciple around, trap him in a dangerous place, and make him disappear? Cough. Fu Dongshu reminded him in a low voice. The Mirror World platform has already reported this matter to you in advance. You all agreed and even took the initiative to participate in the plan. You even went to the Zhuang country to find Zhuang Gaoxian. That's why this matter was carried out. The white-haired old man's momentum of denouncing someone immediately collapsed. For a moment, he did not know how to pick it up again, nor did he know where to start. He originally went out angrily and aggressively looked for someone, thinking that no matter who it was, they would have to take responsibility for this matter. At this moment, he suddenly realized that he had lost his disciple. He said that he had forgotten something when he left the house. The white-haired elder froze on the spot. As a junior, although Fu Dongshu's cultivation level was also that of a perfected one, It was not good for him to strike while the iron was hot and make the senior perfected one feel even more awkward. Thus, he also fell silent. After the wind blew, the dense forest fell into a strange silence. Only the rustling of the leaves could be heard. Fortunately, he had the bitter feeling. He enthusiastically walked out from behind Fu Dongshu and directly shook the white-haired old man's hand. Ayaya, so it's spiritual master Tsang. Caught off guard, the white-haired elder's right hand was grabbed. Seeing the bald monk in front of him, he could not help but be taken aback. You know me? Then how could I not recognize him? Kuju said in a reproachful tone, spiritual master Tsang, a person of virtue and prestige. How could I not recognize him? I'm sorry, my memory isn't too good. Perhaps I've been in seclusion for too long. The white-haired old man asked awkwardly, You are? Fu Dongshu opened his mouth. He is I am Kuju. Kuju held Song Kan's hand tightly and said loudly, I don't belong to any sect or sect. I'm just an unaffiliated cultivator who is now wholeheartedly pursuing the Tao. You're wearing a monk's robe and shaving your head, and you say that you're wholeheartedly pursuing the Tao. Even if Song Kan was in seclusion for another 800 years, he would not be able to believe these words. Have we met before? He could only continue to ask. Kuju was not embarrassed at all. Although we haven't met before, we will definitely meet again in the future. Ayaya. He shook his head. I thought you were going to attack my friend and was about to attack you. Fortunately, I was calm. It's really a case of the flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. We're family, but we don't recognize each other. Fu Dongshu hurriedly interjected. I'm not friends with him at all. This monk is from Xiankong Temple. Didn't you all leave? Kuju glared at him angrily. Fu Dongshu's heart was galloping. Xiankong Temple is really a good signboard. This old monk is so natural when he's using it and when he's not using it. Song Kan was stunned. Family? Sigh. Kuju was still holding his hand tightly. My disciple is Jiang Wang. He's the one who was captured by your disciple. This was fate. How could there be any logic to it? Now that they're both missing, aren't the two of us in the same boat? Aren't we family? As the saying goes, the mountains are heavy and the rivers are hard to find. I pity the hearts of all the masters in the world. Song Kan pulled his hand out and put on a fake smile. So it's Scoundrel Chi. What are you talking about? Kuju rebuked. We're all close friends in the sea. We're all humans. We're all sad. And we're all looking for disciples. Why do we care about countries and sects? Isn't it ridiculous? My friend, your love is boundless. You make it sound so easy. Song Kan was unmoved. You make it sound easy? Kuju sneered. We enlightened masters understand the Tao and prove our hearts. How can we make it sound so easy? If we say it, we do it. I left Xiankong Temple because I no longer have any thoughts of sections. Do you dare to leave your sect? We enlightened masters are carefree and straightforward. Why we need to protect our sects? It's the same for countries. I dare to scold Jiangshu, but do you dare to scold Ji Fengzhou? Ji Fengzhou was the name of the current Emperor Jing. Song Kan was stunned and said, I also dare to scold Jiangshu. Kuju looked at him in surprise. He probably didn't expect this person to be so smart. Fu Dongshu couldn't sit by and watch them continue talking. He stood between the two with a cold face and looked at Kuju. Stop talking nonsense. Enlightened Master Tsang is magnanimous, but it doesn't mean you can always be impudent. Kuju looked at Fu Dongshu with hurt. Why do you treat us differently? Fu Dongshu was speechless. Is there a need to ask? It's as if you don't know where you're sitting. Kuju took half a step to the left and walked past Fu Dongshu. He said to Song Kan, after chasing them for a while, they've disappeared. I think my disciple and your disciple can be friends. No discord, no concord. He paused. We can also be friends. Song Kan realize that times had changed. He couldn't respond to the monk's words. He turned to look at Fu Dongshu and asked, What's wrong with this person? I don't know. Fu Dongshu shook his head and asked, Why don't we kill him? Is it convenient? Song Kan asked, Didn't you hear what he said? He doesn't belong to any country or sect. Fu Dongshu said, I think we can kill him at will. Hey. Kuju said angrily, Is it reasonable to talk about killing me in front of me? Killing people goes against the harmony of the heavens. Fu Dongshu silently took a step to the side and formed an angle with Song Can. He stretched out his hand and touched the sky. It was as if he was covering the sky with a layer of black cloth. He said gloomily, "Then let's cover the sky first." Ku Ju raised his hands. "I surrender. Jing country is the strongest country in the world. They wouldn't do something as tasteless as killing people, right?" Fu Dongshu saw that although Ku Ju raised his hands, his left hand was holding the Vajra seal, and his right hand was holding the fearless seal. He didn't have the slightest sincerity in surrendering. Fu Dongshu was about to continue scolding him when he suddenly had a thought. His left eye instantly crystallized like colored glass, and dense runes flowed out like a waterfall. Ku Ju's faint murderous aura dissipated. "Zhongshan Yinwen is here," he said. Chapter 1278. Zhongshan Yinwen. Song Can frowned. What's he doing here? Unlike Ku Ju, who was a perfected person without any position or power, Zhongshan Yinwen was the great general of the Jing Kingdom's Eagle Guard. The leaders of the 6 guards and 7 guards were the core of the Junting Empire. Even though Song Can was in seclusion all year round, he still knew his name. Fu Dongshu glanced at Ku Ju. Ku Ju didn't have the self-awareness to avoid arousing suspicion. He even looked at Fu Dongshu with a thirsty gaze, almost urging him to speak faster. Fu Dongshu thought for a moment. After all, it wasn't a secret, so he said without hesitation, "Zhongshan Yinwen is with Chotai right now, wandering around with him. This time, he's here on behalf of the Jing Kingdom to inform us of 2 things. First, the Jing Kingdom will only allow us to seal off the forbidden area for 2 days. Second, he wants to freely observe our search operation." Song Can noticed that Fu Dongshu used the word inform instead of discuss. He couldn't help but be furious. We didn't seal off the Jing Kingdom's territory. What right does he have to make demands of us? Fu Dongshu wanted to say that times have changed, but after thinking about it, he only smiled bitterly. After all, this area is closer to the Jing Kingdom. Rude barbarian. Song Can was furious. Tell him to get lost. If he wants to observe, then so be it. It's not a big deal, so don't be angry. Fu Dongshu advised. With your help, 2 days will be enough. 2 days is more than enough time for us to turn this place upside down. To put it bluntly, the present was different from the past. Now, there were 6 powerhouses in the world, and the Jing Kingdom was an overlord. The area that the Jing Kingdom had sealed off was mostly within the Jing Kingdom's influence. In order to search for Tianjiao's Zhao Xinyang, the Jing Kingdom forcefully sealed off the territory. It could be said that they had a good reason for doing so. But to put it bluntly, whether this ban would take effect depended on whether the Jing Kingdom was willing to give face. Mu and Sheng were at war, and she was also in conflict with the Jing Kingdom. The Jing Kingdom only requested to reduce the duration of the blockade, which was already considered giving face. Zhongshan Yinwen's request to observe was to consolidate the Jing Kingdom's influence in this area. They couldn't let people think that the Jing Kingdom had the final say in this place. It could even be said that this was the bottom line of the Jing Kingdom. Therefore, they were notifying, not discussing, because there was no room for negotiation. If Jingwa didn't agree, then they could only wait to be chased away or start a war here. The reason why Song Can was unable to restrain his anger was that the forbidden area that was currently sealed off was actually within Jing country's sphere of influence in the past. The sea had turned into mulberry fields, and the ruler had quietly changed. Jing country could still exert influence, but it was not as loud as Jing country's voice here. An old-fashioned figure like Song Can might still be immersed in the awe of Jing country commanding the world, but Fu Dongshu was very clear that that era had already passed. Of course, Jing country was still as powerful as before, but the crux of the problem was there were no longer no opponents in the world. Disregarding everything else, was it enough to explain how the authority of the door of 10,000 demons was distributed? When Song heard him say this, although he was somewhat dissatisfied, he did not insist. Now is the time for you to make the decision. If you think this is good, then so be it. Let's search this Wind Empress forest first. He turned his head to look at Ku Ju. Since that monk is looking for a disciple, you shouldn't slack off. Old brother Tsang, don't worry. Ku Ju patted his chest. I'm famous for being simple and hard-working. He kept calling Tsang Kin old brother, as if he had completely forgotten that they had almost rolled up their sleeves and fought to the death just now. Tsang Kin looked left and right, unable to hide his worry for his disciple in the end. There are 6 perfected masters searching this area. I don't think they'll miss any traces. In fact, there are 8 perfected masters. Fu Dongshu smiled bitterly. Minister of Qi's imperial court, Wen Yinyu, and commander of the Winter Solitude Army, Shi Mingjin, are also here. Tsang Kin was not surprised at this time. He was only silent for a moment. What will come will come. On the contrary, Ku Ju scolded. Are the people of Qi turtles? Why are they so slow? Different people had different wills, and different countries had different demands. The collision of wills could very well result in life and death. The conflict between demands often led to war. A total of 8 perfected masters of the present era collided and arrived in this area at the same time. Search the disappeared Tianjiao. At this time, Jiang Wang did not know how many people were searching for him. He also did not know where he was. After their last conversation, Miaoyu had not spoken to him again. Every day, she would only return to the room at night and feed him medicine. Then, she would sit quietly at the tea table for the night and leave at dawn. At first, he was unwilling to drink the medicine. However, after being forced to drink it a few times, he obediently drank it. The injuries to his organs healed very quickly. What was really difficult to deal with was his 5 prefectures C, which had been forcefully penetrated. Even with the unusually vast, isolated island and the 5 inner prefectures with the seeds of remarkable abilities, they could not stop the turbulence in his 5 prefectures C. Jiang Wang felt like he was a water tank that had a hole in it, and water kept leaking out. However, the water tank leaked out water, while he leaked out transcendent power. Miaoyu changed several types of medicine consecutively. Each bowl of medicine was more bitter than the last. At first, he had to drink 9 bowls at a time, but now it was reduced to 3 bowls. It seemed to have solved the problem of the leakage. This could be considered as stabilizing his injuries. When his 5 prefectures C recovered to a certain extent, at least to the extent that it could support his 5 prefectures C at the same time, the advantage of a Heaven Palace cultivator would be revealed. For now, he could only heal passively. During the entire process, Miaoyu did not speak to him at all. Even if she wanted to know the extent of his recovery, she directly probed with her Daoyuan, regardless of whether he resisted or not. He did resist a few times, but each time he was ruthlessly suppressed. Apart from his injuries gradually recovering, he knew nothing about the outside world. It was inevitable that he was somewhat anxious. He did not know what Cheng Gengsheng was doing in the Qi. He did not know what the Jing Kingdom's reaction was. He did not know whether Master Ku Ju had returned to the Xiankong Temple. He did not know whether Zhao Xuanyan's body had been thrown into the myriad world's desolate tomb. He did not know whether his cause of death could still be found. He did not know whether anyone could find the blood puppet true devil. If his relationship with Song Wanchu was exposed, he would not be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the river. He could not let Zhuang Changxian come back to life to testify for him. Even if he did, he would not be Zhuang Changxian if he did not kill him immediately. At the same time, he had many doubts in his heart. He did not know why Miaoyu was wearing a monk's robe and a Bodhi mask. He did not know why Miaoyu could find him. He did not know where Miaoyu had taken him. He did not even know what kind of medicine he was drinking every day. Miaoyu obviously felt his anxiety, but she didn't say a word. Occasionally, she would glance at him. There were only 2 words in those charming eyes. Beg me. He would not beg. Chapter 1279. During the days of recuperation, he gritted his teeth and did not speak. The curtains were always hung on the silver hook. Other than when he drank medicine, there was always a distance between them. That kind of distance did not only exist in this room, and it was definitely not limited to the 5.5 steps between the bed and the tea table. It was another night. Jiang Wang did not know which day it was, because he did not know how long he had been unconscious, and there was no way for him to communicate with others. Counting from the day he woke up, he had been drinking medicine for 5 days. Miao Yu pushed open the door and walked in when the night was deep, just like every other day. She was still wearing a gray monk robe, with a monk's hat wrapped around her long hair and a Bodhi mask covering her face. Jiang Wang could roughly outline her appearance just by listening to the sound of her footsteps. He had never been in such a powerless state for such a long time in his life. He could only lie on the bed every day, slowly moving his Daoyuan and silently nourishing his body, waiting for it to get better. He could not cultivate and did not have the spare energy to explore his inner mansion. Even if he studied Taoist techniques in his mind, he could not expend too much energy. After thinking for a while, he had to rest for a while. In addition, he could only listen to the sound of the footsteps, which were gradually getting farther and farther away. Speaking of which, this should be his longest rest period. In the past, no matter what, he had never slacked off on cultivation. But now, due to the state of his body, he could only intermittently move his Daoyuan and study Taoist techniques. He could not do more. He had a long time to sleep and a long time to be in a daze. When he slept, he was drowsy, but when he was in a daze, he was completely at ease. Miao Yu walked into the room, and, as usual, she lit a lamp first. This bronze lamp was filled with lamp oil boiled with Piper mulberry tree resin. It was used to calm the mind and was especially suitable for people who were sick in bed. A beam of light softly lit up the room. She took out 3 bowls of boiled medicine from the storage box and checked them one by one with a body-mimicking grass. The body-mimicking grass was a precious medicine with a very magical effect. After it was contaminated with the breath of the patient, it would imitate the patient's physical state. It was usually used to test medicine for the patient and could reflect the patient's state after taking the medicine to the greatest extent. The condition of the mimicry grass was very good, and today's medicine was very suitable. Miao Yu calmly put it away. After using his spirit power to slightly adjust the temperature of the medicine, he took out a wooden tray and carried the 3 bowls of extremely ugly-looking medicine to the side of the bed. One of the bowls was multicolored and extremely complicated. One of the bowls was a gloomy green with fluorescence, and one of the bowls was as black as ink. She looked at the strange creatures and suddenly remembered the bowl of soup in the black bear's cave. She couldn't help but smile. Therefore, he walked even more actively. Her steps were light, and the fragrance of her fragrance drifted. She walked to the side of the bed with a beautiful posture. With one hand, she lifted Jiang Wang, who was lying on the bed, to lean against the headboard. The smell of the 3 bowls of medicine mixed together to form an indescribably terrifying smell. Not only was the smell pungent, but it was also heart-wrenching. Jiang Wang glanced around, and his eyelids twitched involuntarily. The corners of Miao Yu's mouth curled up again under the mask, but she still didn't speak. She just picked up one of the bowls and moved it towards Jiang Wang's lips. Jiang Wang had already remembered the consequences of refusing. Therefore, he obediently opened his mouth. Miao Yu's eyes were smiling even more. She gently poured the bowl of ink-black medicinal liquid into his mouth. Gulp, gulp. Jiang Wang hurriedly swallowed it. Although he had a strong will, at this moment his eyebrows were knitted together, as tight as iron bars. Miao Yu's hand was very steady, and the second bowl of multicolor medicine was brought over. Jiang Wang opened his mouth again, as if he was facing death with equanimity after drinking 3 bowls of medicine in succession. She put away the bowl and the tray. She casually picked up a handkerchief and wiped the corners of Jiang Wang's mouth. She then grabbed Jiang Wang's leg and pulled it down, making him return from sitting to lying down. This attitude made Jiang Wang feel even more ashamed. It was as if he was a baby who was only a few months old and could only be manipulated by adults. But he couldn't protest. He knew that the woman was waiting for him to speak. But he didn't. Jiang Wang continued to gnash his teeth in a cold war. Miaoyu had already left the bedside without a care. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 steps. She sat down in front of the tea table. She sat with her back to Jiang Wang, cross-legged, and closed her eyes. Her graceful back was like a painting reflected on the wall by the light. What kind of painter could draw such a beautiful scene? Not long after, the light was blown out. Using the oil boiled from peepal mulberry tree to light the lamp was excellent for recuperation, but it was only suitable to light the lamp for an hour every night. Otherwise, it would not be enough. The moonlight was also blocked by the window. Now, only the night flowed between the two of them. One of them was sitting, and the other was lying down. Their breathing was very gentle. It seemed that there were no waves, and they were just wasting time. But both of them knew that no matter how long the night was, it would eventually pass. Accidents always happen unexpectedly. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Jiang Wang only felt the wind move, and he was squeezed inside, and there was one more person beside him. The white curtain was already down, and the small silver hook was moving back and forth in the air. His mind suddenly tensed up. Junior sister True Jade. A female voice sounded outside the door. True Jade? Was that her new name? After recuperating here for so long, this was the first time someone had come to visit him. He had thought that no one would come. A woman's voice sounded beside him. Senior sister, I'm already asleep. What's the matter? It was too close. Creak, the door had already been pushed open, and then it was closed. The unknown senior sister had already walked into the room. Jiang Wang was very nervous. He guessed that this nervousness was because of his current identity and current situation. The suspicion of being in cahoots with demons had not been cleared. How many places in the world dared to protect him? He could not be discovered by others. You don't have to get up. From the sound of her voice, that senior sister should be standing by the door. I'll just say a few words to you here. I don't know what to say when I really meet you face to face. Jiang Wang only felt that his arm seemed to touch a ball of water. The water was warm and soft, and it fit the shape of his arm. There seemed to be a vortex there, attracting all his attention. Everything was actually very quiet. He could clearly hear his own heartbeat. Senior sister, what do you want to say? Only then did Jiang Wang realize that her voice was very different from usual. The thousands of flirtatious and seductive feelings in her voice had all been restrained. It became calm, quiet, and free. From Miaoyu, White Lotus, and then to True Jade, what had she experienced? Jiang Wang had always known that he did not understand her. He had also always thought that he did not want to understand her. However, he could not block his ears, so at this moment, he could only listen in such an awkward way. You usually don't see people, but it's rare for you to stay in the nunnery for these few days. The female voice by the door said, Senior sister is also very happy to see you. Miaoyu's breathing seemed to be a little heavy. That kind of weight seemed to be pressing down on the air, causing Jiang Wang's breathing to be unnatural at this moment. However, her voice still flowed out in that clear tone. My temper is unstable. I can't stay in one place. Sometimes when I meet a kitten or a dog, I have to stay for a long time. The matters in the nunnery have really been hard on you, senior sister. Jiang Wang unnaturally wanted to move a little to the side, but his body was really powerless. His breathing became more and more difficult. He did not know why, but he felt that there seemed to be a source of fire next to him. There was an unbelievable temperature that seemed to be burning something. A flame without a flame, burning without a heart, begging for monthly tickets, begging for a genuine subscription. Chapter 1280. The senior sister, whose name he still didn't know, was standing by the door and talking to True Jade behind the curtain. Her tone was very gentle. Don't talk about hard work. I'm just doing what I can do, she paused and said. You've been in the sect for more than a year, right? How do I treat you? Senior sister treats me extremely well, said True Jade. I treat you well because I really treat you as one of my family. Although you entered the sect late, I felt close to you the first time I saw you. The female voice by the door said, Master ordered you to travel more and let you grow up outside. Naturally, she has her own intentions. Don't think that she doesn't love you. Senior sister. I know, this true jade who was gentle and quiet in front of his senior sister was Miaoyu, whom Jiang Wang had never seen before. Was she really so docile? Even a little shy and introverted? This woman was like an unsolvable mystery. There were thousands of changes. The more he saw, the more he didn't know what she was like. All right, the senior sister said, last month, I asked Yun to help bring you to the Riverview platform. She didn't act like a princess, did she? No, Princess Yun is very easy to get along with. She helped me avoid a lot of trouble, said True Jade behind the curtain. Thank you, senior sister Yuhua, for helping me arrange this opportunity. Although he knew that she had already taken measures to conceal herself, Jiang Wang still tried his best to control himself and not make any movements. Of course, with his current physical condition, it was very difficult to make any movements other than opening his mouth and shouting. He only silently thought. Miaoyu's senior sister was called Yuhua. True Jade? Yuhua? Monk robes? Nunnery? Could it be that this was really a nunnery? Also, Miaoyu actually went to the Riverview platform when a Yellow River meeting was held. Jiang Wang remembered that when the Yellow River meeting had just ended, he saw the cloaked nun next to Helian Yunyun when he greeted Zhao Ruqing. He was stunned for a moment. Yuhua seemed to smile. We're sisters. What's there to thank? I forgot to ask you. What do you think of the Yellow River meeting this time? True Jade pursed her lips deliberately. Nothing much. There are no heroes in time, so I made a name for myself. Yuhua was somewhat surprised. Didn't they say that Taoist Master Taiyu of the Daoyuo Mountain became the youngest Taoist master in history? I'm talking about the other paragon, said True Jade. Jiang Wang. That's true, Yuhua said, not long after he won the championship. He was already wanted by the Jing Kingdom, saying that he was suspected of being in cahoots with the devil. These hegemonic countries were really filthy. In order to fight for first place, they didn't care about anything else. No wonder Vagabond He Guan said that the biggest drawback of the country's system is the depravity of society. He Guan Wanren's real name was not reliable, and his background could not be verified. He called himself Rogue Cultivator He Guan, and the people of the world called him that. He was a very special top powerhouse in the history of cultivation. He had once resolutely opposed the implementation of the national system in the modern world, but in the end, he was unable to resist the tide of the times and disappeared from the world. The talk of being in possession of the devil is nothing more than something Jing Guo fabricated to strike at his opponents. There's nothing trustworthy about it. Yuzhen, who was half leaning against the head of the bed, said, however, that inner palace arena chief is indeed difficult to convince the masses. What do you mean? Yuhua asked curiously. I remember that it was said that this year's Yellow River Conference was one of the most exciting events in history. Why is it that the inner palace arena chief cannot convince the masses? Jiang Wang cursed inwardly. This person called Yuhua clearly understood the situation of this year's Yellow River Conference very well, yet he deliberately asked. Wasn't it just to remind her to help him obtain a spot to watch the competition? This was too revealing. His battle prowess is acceptable, but his looks are not good. True Jade said regretfully, protruding ears, pig nose, crooked mouth, pockmarked face. Don't mention how unsightly he is. Yuhua, who was separated by a curtain, said earnestly, Junior Marshal's sister, we can't judge a book by its cover. The Yellow River Conference is Qianjiao's competition and a place to show off one's talent, but it's not a beauty pageant. Since that Jiang Wang was able to win first place. Even if he really looks like a pig, he's still the best Qianjiao in the world. Jiang Wang, can you stop comforting me? I wasn't this angry in the first place. You're right, Senior Marshal's sister. I've learned my lesson. True Jade glanced at Jiang Wang, who was lying next to her, and said, then, Senior Marshal's sister, what exactly do you want to say by visiting so late at night? Indeed, they have been beating around the bush for a long time. Then, I won't treat you as an outsider. Yuhua finally said, the head of Miaoyu Temple failed to break through to truth insight, and unfortunately, the Yun Shun Temple collapsed. She doesn't have much time left. Thus, the seat of the head of the Miaoyu temple became empty. I've been cultivating diligently for so many years, and I have the heart to do something for the sect. At this point, the meaning was obvious. Senior Marshal Sister. True Jade was silent for a moment and said slowly, "There are 3 heads of temples in Cleansing Moon Nunnery, and each position is important. In terms of qualifications, True Jade hasn't been in the sect for long. In terms of cultivation, she's only in the outer building realm. She's not proficient in Buddhist scriptures, and she doesn't know how to teach. How can I have the right to speak on this matter?" So, this was Cleansing Moon Nunnery. It was a Buddhist sect in the world. Known as the #1 nunnery in the world, Cleansing Moon Nunnery's current status in Buddhism was probably only below Xiankong Temple and Shumi Mountain. The doubts that lingered in Jiang Wang's heart for a long time finally had an answer. No wonder Miaoyu dared to hide him here. Even if the people of Jing searched the world, they couldn't force Cleansing Moon Nunnery to open their doors. However, how did Miaoyu enter Cleansing Moon Nunnery? Moreover, it sounded like she was a core disciple, and her identity was very important. How could the Buddhist sects in the world not find out that she was from an evil sect? How could they not know her background? Jiang Wang listened in silence. Yuhua laughed gently. "What power? We're family, so what do we do? Can't we discuss it? I'm not asking you to take the initiative to say or do anything. It's just that if Master asks about you, you can mention it." They were separated by a veil. How could the distance between them be just a thin veil? True Jade suddenly turned her head and looked into Jiang Wang's eyes. Her eyes were like flowing waves as she gently said, "Even if Senior Apprentice Sister didn't say it, if Master had mentioned it to me, I would have supported Senior Apprentice Sister. There are some things—" "I understand," she said. The flowing waves were like a drizzle floating on the mountain. They were like rainbows and reflected the sunset. They were dazzling. Jiang Wang closed his eyes tightly, unwilling to look at her. Then he heard Yu Hua say again, "Although it's a small matter, Senior Sister has to say it and accept this favor." Jiang Wang felt that True Jade seemed to be slowly lowering her head. His weak body couldn't move, and the current situation didn't allow him to make any movements to be discovered by Yu Hua. "I will naturally side with you," True Jade said, no matter when Jiang Wang, with his eyes closed, seemed to be able to feel the orchid-like breath approaching. "Senior Sister doesn't know what to say." "Ah, True Jade." Yuhua looked very touched. "Senior Sister will go back first. You have a good rest," she said. Creak, the door was pushed open and closed again. Jiang Wang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 1281. He had breathed a sigh of relief too early. Yu Hua left the room and even thoughtfully closed the door, but True Jade did not leave the bed. That faintly discernible fragrance seemed to be getting closer, impossible. Jiang Wang suddenly opened his eyes. A small sachet that was suspended in front of him was pulled back by his jade-like pinky. True Jade was still leaning against the head of the bed, maintaining a certain distance as she looked down at him. At some point, she had already taken off the Bodhi mask. Therefore, her soul-stirring eyes and plump red lips that seemed to be burning with flames were clearly displayed in his eyes. Her red lips were like flames, and at this moment, the corners of her mouth were still holding a teasing smile. Between his eyes and hers, a smooth white hand was suspended. The slightly curved pinky was like a jade hook, and the dangling sachet was gently swaying. That fragrance that was getting closer and closer. So is this, what true jade, what nun, what pure, natural, gentle, and tranquil. She had always loved to tease people like this. At this moment, the woman's voice was languid, like a tired kitten. "Do you have anything you want to say?" she asked. Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Get down." Bang! Jiang Wang straightforwardly lay down on the floor. He lay on the floor, glaring at the woman sitting on the bed. True Jade patted the non-existent dust on her hands and sneered. "You seem to have forgotten whose bed this is. Reflect on yourself for one night." Jiang Wang said angrily, "When my injuries recover, I will definitely—" "Ugh!" A warm and soft feeling fiercely crashed into him. His lips were blocked, and he forgot to breathe for a moment. He subconsciously wanted to push away the woman who had suddenly pounced on him, but his hands were firmly held down. Only then did he remember to activate his Tao essence. Although his body was weak, he was able to activate his extraordinary power. However, the Tao essence that he had gathered was easily scattered. He tried very hard to resist, but all resistance was destroyed. He even wanted to knock on the 5 prefectures, but the entire 5 prefectures' sea was suppressed by true Jade's power, and there were no waves. Only now did he realize. His tightly clenched teeth had been gently and forcefully pried open. What was the night? What was the moon? Or the clouds? For a moment, he could not remember anything. His mind was completely blank. Everything was far away, but everything was also very close. Above the blue waves, 2 lovebirds intertwined their necks. A thin stream flows like a long dam, entangled by weeping willows. The wise men of the past were truly amazing at creating words. For example, the word fit. As long as you think about it, you can feel the wonderful sense of fit. Now, Jiang Wang finally understood the beauty of this phrase. He suddenly woke up with a start. Oh. Unable to make a sound of resistance, the sound of which was stuck in his throat. That gentle entanglement swirled around the tip of his tongue. The world was spinning now. Oh, heaven and earth suddenly separated. True Jade pushed him away and floated back to the bedside. Her monk hat was nowhere to be seen. Her black hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her beautiful eyes were slightly blurred, causing people to panic. She gently wiped her red lips with her jade-white index finger and lazily said, "Since you reminded me, I'll take advantage of the fact that you haven't recovered to collect some interest." Jiang Wang couldn't tell what he was feeling. Shame, annoyance, anger, anxiety, or perhaps a combination. Which, he said angrily, a warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. How did I humiliate you? True Jade asked calmly. Jiang Wang was momentarily speechless. TSK. True Jade took advantage of the situation and lay down on her side on the bed. Her wonderful figure was like a landscape splashed with ink, flowing in a beautiful posture that was rarely seen in the world. She propped up her cheek with her hand and looked at Jiang Wang lying on the ground. "Jiang Qingyang, you have unparalleled faithfulness. I spent so much effort to save you. Don't you owe me? What I owe you, I'll repay." "Of course." True Jade smiled. "You're repaying me right now." As she finished speaking, she pursed her lips. "You." Jiang Wang was so angry that he trembled, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. It was only now that he tasted a sweet and fishy taste. Only then did he discover that his lips had been bitten open just now. He became increasingly angry. "You don't seem convinced?" True Jade asked with a smile. Jiang Wang looked at her eager eyes, but in the end, he didn't dare to test the waters. He sighed and changed his strategy. "Let's talk." "Okay," True Jade said lazily. "How do you want to talk? What do you want to talk about?" "Let's talk like this." Jiang Wang regrouped and tried to shake off the baffling atmosphere. "Is this cleansing moon nunnery?" True Jade seemed to be in a good mood and nodded slightly. Yes. "Why are you here?" Jiang Wang asked. True Jade looked at him and said with a smile, "Are you worried about me?" Jiang Wang decisively changed the question. "How did you find me?" "I mean, Zhao Xinyang took me to hide in the ancient devil's cave. Even the enlightened masters can't find us." True Jade still had a smile on her face. "I'm an evil witch. How can I not know about the ancient devil's cave? The White Bone Path's goal is to establish a divine nation in the modern world. When necessary, it has nothing to do with being neighbors with the demons." In fact, she didn't sleep or rest to find Jiang Wang. She searched inch by inch. However, she was more accurate than Ku Ju in determining Zhao Xuanyang's hiding route. This was because she had planted the white lotus on Jiang Wang's back with her own hands. Her weak perception helped her determine the approximate location. However, she didn't say this. It sounded like a matter of course that an evil which could find the ancient devil's cave. At this time, She still had a smile on her face, and her eyes were still bewitching. However, Jiang Wang didn't dare to look at her again for some reason. He withdrew his gaze and opened his eyes to look at the roof. He asked again, "What's the situation outside?" "I don't know," True Jade said bluntly. "I don't know. Jinghua, I don't know. Master Ku Ju, I don't know. How long will it take for my injuries to heal?" Jiang Wang asked again. "I can't tell you," True Jade said. Jiang Wang frowned. "Didn't we already agree to talk? How can you talk about this with a girl?" True Jade rebuked. Jiang Wang said, "Then let's not talk." "Do you think we'll talk just because you say we'll talk?" Jiang Wang didn't say anything. True Jade asked again, "Do you want to pay interest?" Jiang Wang said in a muffled voice, "Then what should we talk about? Just now, what did you feel?" Jiang Wang was speechless. You didn't feel anything?" Jiang Wang gritted his teeth and said, "Nothing. Are you trying to goad me?" True Jade chuckled. "It sounds like you're not satisfied. Let's talk about cleansing moon nunnery." Jiang Wang hurriedly said, "Speaking of which, I really don't know much about Buddhism. Let's talk." "Oh, then what do you want to know? Why don't you talk about your senior sister Yu Hua first?" Jiang Wang lay on his back on the ground, and True Jade lay on her side on the bed. They chatted like this, talking about things that might be meaningful or meaningless. Jiang Wang looked at the dark roof, and True Jade looked at him. Chapter 1282. Dawn came quickly, as if it was being driven away by something. The night was still a little long, but suddenly the morning light shone on the window paper. Then it dispersed. Looking at the time, it's time to go to the morning class. True Jade lazily sat up from the bed and explained naturally. Jiang Wang did not speak. He lay on the ground with his eyes closed, as if he had not woken up yet. A body that had not recovered from serious injuries was always prone to drowsiness. He slept and woke up and slept again. He did not get enough sleep last night, and he was not awake enough. "But you shouldn't be so natural," a voice in his heart said. True Jade didn't care and treated it as if he had really fallen asleep. She got out of bed and easily carried him to the bed. She said, "Ah, poor thing. How can you lie on the ground? What if you catch a cold? You're really worrisome." Her languid tone was like a warbler's song. It seemed that she was not the one who threw Jiang Wang off the bed last night. Jiang Wang, who was seriously injured and weak, seemed to be drifting on the sea. The water that held him was soft, broad, and dangerous. It could send him to where he should go, and it could also bury him. The moment he landed on the bed, he felt as if he had landed on the shore, and he had a real feeling of stepping on solid ground. Lying on the floor for a night is good for your injuries. It's not good to lie down for too long. True Jade put him on the bed and said gently, "I'll be back tonight." Then she turned around with light steps. "How should I address you?" Behind her, the injured lying on his back opened his eyes. They regained their clarity and calmness. It was a pair of very sober eyes. "Meow you? True Jade? White Lotus." True Jade stopped in her tracks. After a while, she said, "You can call me whatever you want. Those are all me." Because neither of them evaded the question, the simple question and answer became cruel. "Yes, those are all you." Jiang Wang said, paused, and continued, "I remember what I owe you. Don't forget what you owe me, Meow you." What a flat voice. But it tore apart the whole night of romance. Tearing apart the temporary illusion of beautiful scenery, the reality was so cold. True Jade didn't say anything. She pushed open the door and walked out. Jiang Wang also stopped talking. His back could still feel the warmth left behind by the previous person. It was like a very weak fire that was still gently roasting him. But his heart was cold. He had no other choice. Jingguo Fan Song Can, Jianyue, Chou Tai, and Fu Dongxiu. Wen Yinyu and Shi Mingjin of the Qi Kingdom had already left Xiankong Temple's Kuju and Jing Kingdom's Zhongshan Yinwen. A total of 8 enlightened masters of the current era were gathered at the Wulong City mountain range. These 8 experts of the present age merely hovered in the air and did not take any further action, but their terrifying pressure was already like a hurricane. In the entire Windopolis Mountains, the birds didn't fly, the beasts didn't walk, the wind didn't blow and the trees didn't sway. Even the lava in the volcanoes seemed to have solidified. From a distance, it was as if the entire Wawini mountain range had shrunk by half. Since they had all arrived here, it was only natural that they had discovered something. I didn't expect this. When Yinyu of the Qi Kingdom shook his head. The Jing Kingdom said that the Qi Kingdom's Tianjiao was connected to the devil, but they sent him to the ancient devil's cave. This was a middle-aged man with a humble temperament. His clothes and accessories were all appropriate, and there was a distinguished character between his eyebrows. At this moment, he looked at the 4 perfected masters of the Jing Kingdom and said with a mocking tone, "Is it because the Jing Kingdom's internal opinions are not unified? Or does Zhao Xianyang not believe the announcement of the Mirror World platform at all?" Zhao Xianyang had once received information from the heavenly mirror outside the ancient devil's cave, so he left a very short trace. Of course, he had used some means to conceal it, but when the perfected masters of the present age swept the ground with their divine senses and probed at a close distance, this trace could not be hidden. The first to discover this place were Chou Tai and Zhongshan Yinwen. Although the ancient devil's cave was hidden at the bottom of the lava river and was extremely difficult to detect, it couldn't escape the perfected masters probing at such a close distance. Zhao Xianyang and Jiang Wang's whereabouts were finally determined. At that time, Chou Tai wanted to enter to explore, but he was stopped by Zhongshan Yinwen, who said that since everyone was here, it was better to wait until everyone was present before entering together, so as to avoid any unexplained matters. This was a reasonable request, so Chou Tai couldn't refuse. As a result, the scene of the 8 perfected masters gathered at the Wawinda mountain range was created. In the face of Wen Yinyu's questioning, Fu Dongshu only sneered. "We still don't know why they entered the ancient devil's cave and how they entered it. Perfected Master Wen, aren't you a bit too anxious to determine the nature of the matter? It makes one feel particularly guilty." The evil-looking Shimingjin took a step forward aggressively. "It can't be that Jiang Wang kidnapped Zhao Xianyang and entered the ancient devil's cave, right? If he had such ability, how was he captured by Zhao Xianyang?" Chou Tai, who was as black as a pot ash and as strong as an iron tower, complimented Shimingjin's physique and appearance. At this moment, he immediately took a step forward and blocked in front of Shimingjin. He was like a bull with horns, and they were like 2 mountains facing each other. Ji Yinyue, who was dressed in an imperial robe, said slowly, "Since the Middle Ages, all the ancient devil's caves have been abandoned, and no demons can cross over to this place." Xianyang was chased anxiously, so he hid in the ancient devil's cave. "What's wrong with that?" Ku Ju frowned innocently. "Who chased him anxiously? Why didn't I know?" "Fellow Taoists," Zhongshan Yinwen said at this moment, "don't be in a hurry to argue. If you have anything to say, let's go in and see the situation first. It's not too late to talk, right?" Judging from his appearance, he was a skinny little old man. No one would think that he was the great general of the Jing Kingdom's Eagle Guard, who was famous for slaying demons. His enemies feared him like a tiger, and so did his grandson. Fu Dongshu immediately said, "General Zhongshan is right." This time, when Yinyu came here on behalf of the Qi faction, and of course, his future son-in-law repeatedly asked him for help. In fact, this was the reason why the Qi faction sent Wen Yinyu here. They wanted to do their best to help Jiang Wang. At this moment, he said, "No matter what, we must bring Jiang Wang back this time." Some people claimed that they would fulfill the demon-slaying alliance treaty, but they disappeared. I find it hard to believe in their strength, and I find it even harder to believe in their accomplishments. How can the safety of the Qi faction's Tianjiao be shouldered by mediocre people? Who are you calling mediocre? Song Kan, who had been holding back for a long time, finally couldn't hold it in anymore. "You're young, but you're full of sarcasm. You don't think about improving yourself and only think about trampling on others. Are you mediocre? You bully the weak with your strength, and you bully the inner palace with your power. Are you mediocre? In the battle between 2 countries, you don't fight for the country, but you bully a young man who isn't even 20 years old. Are you mediocre?" Wen Yinyu glanced at him in disgust and said coldly, "I'm an old man. What did you say?" Song Qin couldn't restrain his anger. Wen Yinyu, who had always been modest and quiet, rarely had a moment like this when he was arguing with others. Shi Mingjin glanced at Dr. Wan, and a sinister smile appeared on his ferocious face. Fellow Taoists, Zhongshan and Yinwen once again stepped out to ease the situation. You haven't found the person yet, so are you going to fight to the death here? I think you're here to find the person, not to fight, right? The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. Since ancient times, our Jing kingdom has shed blood and blood for the sake of the demon-slaying alliance treaty. Who would have thought that there would be a day when it would be tainted as a national struggle? It's really disappointing. Fu Dongshu shook his head. Fine, let's go in and take a look. Then, he took the lead and descended into the crater of the volcano. The surging magma lake slowly parted in the middle, opening a path for him. Chapter 1283. As Fu Dongshu spoke, he walked toward the ancient devil's cave. However, he saw a figure flash. Wen Yinyu had taken the lead and walked in front of him. The sacrifice of our ancestors will not be forgotten. The younger generation should maintain their integrity and not bring shame to our ancestors. Blocking in front of Fu Dongshu, Wen Yinyu leaned slightly to the side and said, I think it's better to let General Zhongshan go in first. What do you all think? Fu Dongshu stopped and smiled. General Zhongshan is a man of virtue and prestige. We trust him. Zhao Xianyang and Jiang Wang were hiding in the ancient devil's cave. It was hard for others to guess, but it was easy for them to deduce. The Jing Tian's 6 friends weren't the only ones who didn't trust Zhuang Gaoxian. Of course, in Jing Wu's opinion, Zhao Xianyang was only brave enough to come up with this idea. From Fu Dongshu's point of view, Zhao Xianyang would never be involved with demons. Therefore, he didn't want to do anything in front of so many perfected persons. As long as he didn't let Qi go in first, it wouldn't be a big problem. Zhongshan Yinwen's status and position determined that he was the most aloof among the 8 perfected persons present. He looked around and confirmed that the remaining perfected persons didn't have any objections. Then, he took a step forward and landed in the ancient devil's cave at the bottom of the lava lake. He didn't want to pass on his responsibility. In the pitch-black ancient devil's cave, the other perfected persons arrived shortly after Zhongshan Yinwen, who looked like a little old man. For a moment, there was silence. The divine consciousness of 8 perfected masters of the present age almost filled up the abandoned primordial devil's Denver. Their divine senses swept across the area like a tidal wave. There were no traces that could hide from their eyes. Zhao Xianyang and Jiang Wang had indeed entered this place and stayed for a while. But now there was no one in the cave. Moreover, there was indeed demonic energy here. There were traces of demons. Both Tianjiao were in trouble, and it was really related to demons. Fu Dongshu suddenly turned around. Do you still dare to say that Jiang Wang has nothing to do with demons? What a joke. Wen Yinyu was even angrier than Huang Xiaolong. Who was the one who made the decision to come to the ancient devil cave? Who was the mastermind behind all of this? Who are you blaming with your own shit? Since they had seen the traces of the demons, who would bear the responsibility? If Jiang Wang was killed by the demons, because of this, Qi would never remain silent. You'd better think carefully about how you're going to explain your Jing countries, Tianjiao, being possessed by the devil. As Zhao Xuanyang's master, Song Qin didn't say anything. He silently walked to the center of the cave and closed his eyes, as if he was sensing something. As for the yellow-faced old monk, he quietly walked before a millstone-like boulder. Just as the 2 perfected persons of Qi and Jing were about to clash, a conflict was about to erupt. The irascible Tsang Shun and the vulgar Ku Ju were both silent at this moment. Ku Ju's skinny finger gently brushed against the stone. He brought the dark brown stain to his eyes for a closer look. It was Jiang Wang's blood. He was pierced through the abdomen by the demon's power. The old monk's voice was a bit hoarse. His organs were also destroyed, he laughed. It was a laugh that made people feel very uncomfortable. When the laughter came to an abrupt end, he suddenly turned around in front of the millstone-like boulder and stared at Fu Dongshu with his somewhat murky eyes. He grinned and said eerily, "The person who was possessed by the devil that was announced by the Mirror World platform seemed to have been killed by the devil." Fu Dongshu was expressionless. He could feel the old monk's killing intent, but he didn't care. "Xianyang." The tall Tsongkan's voice was no longer as irascible as before. It was actually a bit dry. "He fought here with a true demon." The result of the battle between Zhao Xianyang, who was in the divine descent realm, and a true demon was needless to say. No matter how confident someone was in Zhao Xianyang, they wouldn't think that he could escape from the hands of a true demon. The complete disappearance of Zhao Xuanyang's traces also proved that result. "How could there be a true demon here?" Zhongshan Yanwen said with a frown. "In the primordial era, the passages to the Devil Caves were completely cut off. The only passage in the modern world is in the depths of the desolate border. This is a very serious problem. If we can't find out the reason, who here can sleep peacefully?" "Do you still need to ask?" Wang Yinyu said with a dark expression. "Of course, there must be someone who is at least at the perfected person level here to receive him and provide him with a beacon to calm down the laws of the modern world and lure the devil into the world." Zhongshan Yanwen nodded. "This is the most likely explanation. They didn't know that the blood-maned true demon existed in this world. Song Wanshi, the true demon, was the first and last finished product that Zhuang Chengxian had created. There hadn't been one in the past, and there probably wouldn't be one in the future. Because the puppet master was in the modern world, the blood-maned true demon didn't face as many obstacles as the other true demons. Therefore, you didn't need to calm down the laws of the modern world. No one could imagine that an inner palace cultivator could receive a true demon. Then, who is that person?" Shiming Jin stared at Chotai ferociously. Chotai stared back without backing down. "Who the F***CK knows who it is? Who knows if it's Qi's dirty tricks that secretly ruined my Tianjiao? You were the ones who said Jiang Wang was enchanted with the devil. You were the ones who secretly captured him. You were also the ones who lost him. Now, you're saying that we ruined your Tianjiao?" When Yin Yu was such a gentle person, but at this moment his face was flushed with anger. He pointed at Chotai and said, "There must be an explanation for this matter. For this, we won't hesitate to go to war." "Perfected one, be careful with your words." Ji Yinyue's face was as cold as frost. "This isn't something you should say, and it's not something you can decide on your own. How can you be a good official when you're angry and start a war? I understand your feelings, but you shouldn't go back on your words." "Go back on my words? Huh." When Yinyu laughed angrily. He flicked his sleeves and said angrily, "It's time for Jinghua to open its eyes from its beautiful dream of being the only supreme one. I'll only say this once. Remember this. You falsely accused the leader of the Yellow River for a groundless crime. You used despicable means to capture Deqi's Tianjiao. You said that you wanted to hold a public trial, but you caused him to go missing. It's unknown whether he's dead or alive. Furthermore, each and every one of you is extremely rude and rude. Jing country has already humiliated our Deqi. Today, if you can't give an explanation, Deqi will demand it with weapons. I declare this in the name of Deqi's Political Affairs Hall's Imperial Advisor. This statement should be witnessed by heaven and earth, so that the sun and the moon can be witnesses." Shi Mingjin clenched his teeth and said, "I, Shi Mingjin of Deqi's Military Affairs Hall, agree." Now, if that when Yin Yu had said this and Shi Mingxian had agreed, it was no longer just words out of anger. The authority that Qi Emperor Jiangshu gave him was greater than expected. What Shi Mingjin said to Pei Xinghe in the past, the Qi people would not hesitate to sacrifice 10,000 people for one person, was true. The most important thing was, since Emperor Qi gave Wen Yinyu and Shi Mingjin the authority to start a war, it meant that Qi was really prepared for war. This caught Ji Yinhua off guard, not to mention where Qi's confidence and determination came from. The Jing kingdom itself was not afraid of Qi's threat of war. However, at this moment, they did not have the authority to do so. A country war especially a country war with Qi, which was one of the 6 most powerful countries in the world, was not something that could be decided easily. Ji Yinyue and Chotai looked at each other, and then turned to look at Fu Dongshu. Among the 4 perfected masters of the Jing Kingdom, Fu Dongshu was the one who could speak on behalf of the Jing Kingdom in this kind of situation. Of course, there was another hidden point. Zhao Xianyang was missing, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. If there was an explanation for Jiang Wang's case, it could only be done by the Mirror World platform. And the person who pushed for Jiang Wang's case was the leader of the Mirror World platform in front of them. There's still time at 12 o'clock. If you have the energy to spare, please support the original subscription of Chidian Chinese Network. Subscriptions are the foundation of the Red Heart world, and also the foundation of the author's book. Chapter 1284. How should Fu Dongshu explain himself? Should he commit suicide to atone for his crime? Obviously not. For Fu Dongshu, he wouldn't even drink 3 cups of wine as punishment. He was a perfected master, the one who controlled the Mirror World platform. He was undoubtedly a powerful figure in Jing Kingdom. How could he explain himself for the death of an inner house cultivator? But Qi was too tough. What made Jiang Shu so conceited? What made Qi so arrogant? When Jing Kingdom was at its peak, it didn't have a firm foothold in the central region. Where was the Jing Kingdom of the past? The Jing Kingdom of the past was still the Jing Kingdom of today. Since ancient times, no one who challenged Jing Kingdom had succeeded. Could Qi be an exception? However, when Yin Yu and Shi Minghuan, the state of Qi that they represented was simply too unyielding. Ji Zhaonan fought Chun Yugui, Shi Minghuan fought Pei Xinghe, and now when Yin Yu wanted Jing Kingdom to give him an explanation in front of Zhongshan Yinwen of Jing Kingdom, could he, Fu Dongshu, bear the responsibility of starting a war with the kingdom of Qi? At this moment, Jing Kingdom had no reason to back down. Jing Kingdom wouldn't do anything to Fu Dongshu because of Qi's threat of a war. But the war caused by this and the losses caused, whether he was willing or not, he had to bear the main responsibility. This was a very bad thing. Jing Kingdom wasn't afraid of a war, but Jing Kingdom didn't plan to start a war with Qi. On the contrary, the reason why the 4 perfected masters of Jing Kingdom were looking for people in the Lock Realm was to end the dispute with Qi as soon as possible so that they could focus on the Battle of Shangmu. If a war between Jing Kingdom and Qi really started because of this, then he wouldn't be able to keep his position as the head of the Mirror World platform. This wasn't a complete abdication after the official path was completed and the political platform was followed. Not only would he lose his power, but he would also lose his cultivation. Fu Dongshu was silent. Countless runes flowed like a waterfall in his glass-like left eye. Jiang Wang isn't dead, he suddenly said. The yellow-faced old monk looked at him. When Yin Yu looked at him, everyone looked at him. He strolled to the millstone-like boulder and pointed at it a few times. A few brown bloodstains on the boulder became clear. The landing point of these drops of blood is not normal. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand in the air. After Jiang Wang's abdomen was penetrated by the devil's power and his internal organs were shattered, he was caught in this place. Of course, he didn't catch Jiang Wang in that situation just to make Jiang Wang's death look better. Therefore, it could only be the person who saved him. The runes in Fu Dongshu's glass-like left eye changed rapidly as he continued. What's strange is that I can't see any traces of this person. He wasn't the only one who couldn't see. The 8 present perfected masters only found traces of Jiang Wang, Zhao Xianyang, and a true demon of unknown origin. My dear disciple didn't die. Kuju's gloomy old eyes lit up again. The traces that Fu Dongshu found were indeed things that he hadn't thought about before, and they couldn't lie. Then where is he? He asked. Fu Dongshu shook his head and looked at Wen Yinyu and Shi Mingjin. Maybe perfected Qi has the answer? Shi Mingjin said coldly. We want to save Tianjiao, so we came here openly. We won't do anything sneaky. Fu Dongshu didn't care about Shi Mingjin's sarcasm. He believed Shi Mingjin's words. Therefore, he was also very confused at this moment. Then who was the mysterious person who couldn't see any traces? Why didn't the true demon stop him? Why didn't the perfected master who led the true demon into the world stop him? Or was it that he had actually fought, but the traces were erased? Even if the traces were erased, there should be traces that were erased, or the other party's ability to hide was far superior to his ability to see through? What do you mean? Yin Wen of Zhongshan was probably the only one with the most detached mentality. He didn't care whether the two Tianjiao lived or died, or whether Qi Jing fought or not. Therefore, he had more time to think about this matter. The perfected master who led the true demon into the world saved Jiang Wang again. Maybe there's more than one perfected master. Ji Yinwei guessed. They were vigilant against each other, and then they hid their traces and left separately? What about Xianyang? Song Can suddenly asked. Fu Dongshu shook his head. I should have seen the same information about Xianyang as you did. I only know that he's missing. However, I can't determine where he is now or whether he's dead or alive. What he didn't say was that he had actually caught a trace of death aura. However, it was very faint, and he wasn't sure who it belonged to. He didn't dare to be sure. Songkin was stunned and only said, no matter what, if he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Xianyang is the Tianjiao of the Jing Kingdom. I'll do my best to search for him, Fu Dongxi said. Songkin glanced at him and didn't say anything. He walked out of the cave alone. The battle between the Qi Jing Kingdom and the danger of the national war were all left behind. This old-school, perfected master who was furious because of the notice of the Jing Kingdom didn't seem to care about anything at this moment. His tall figure actually gave people a hunched feeling at this moment. He left the demon's cave alone and walked out of the volcano through the magma path. He stopped at the mouth of the volcano. He looked up at the sky. The thick clouds were low and looked very oppressive. His eyebrows, eyes, nose, lips, hair quickly solidified and transformed. In an instant, he turned into a tree and stood on this barren volcano. In the ancient demon's cave, Wen Yinyu and Shi Mingjin were in a difficult situation for a moment. They said that they wanted an explanation, but Jiang Wang seemed to have been rescued. Jiang Wang was alive and dead. Naturally, the explanation they wanted was different. However, if they said that they didn't want an explanation, Jiang Wang was still missing perfected Master Wen. At this moment, Ji Inyue said, this time, not only did the Qi suffer losses, but the Jing Kingdom's Shunlin state, Tianjiao, also disappeared into thin air. No one knows where he went. This matter is really complicated and strange. It's obvious that a third party is involved. It's best for us to remain calm. The Qi people aren't afraid of war, and neither are the Jing people. But we're the strongest countries in the world. Even if we fight, it's a fight between the heroes of the world. If the war between the two countries was instigated by a villain, wouldn't we be the laughingstock of the world? Ji Inyue, who was born in the royal family of the Jing Kingdom, was indeed the best person to say such words. Things seemed to be getting more and more complicated. The lack of important information made even them, who were enlightened masters of the present age, more and more confused. An enlightened master of the present age and a black-robed demon that they couldn't detect made all of their speculations far from the main point. At this time, when Yinyu also calmed down and said lightly, you need to clarify one thing. This matter was Jing was rudeness first. It wasn't Jiang Wang who chased after Zhao Xianyang. It was Zhao Xianyang who used the Shunlin state to bully the inner house. He captured Jiang Wang and wanted to lock him back to Mount Yujing. This led to their disappearance. Qi is not responsible for the Jing Kingdom's disappearance in Tianjiao, but the Jing Kingdom should be responsible for the Qi's disappearance in Tianjiao. Fu Dongshu said, the Zhuang Kingdom is Jiang Wang's homeland. They have evidence and witnesses. Can't they be trusted? The Jing Kingdom is just upholding the ancient Demon Slayer Treaty. What's wrong with that? Wen Yinyu said, Jiang Wang is Qi Ju, Ren Qi, Qi Post, Qi Man. What is the Zhuang Kingdom? How can they convict us? Who is Zhuang Gaoxian? How can he lead the Mirror World stage? Let's not talk about anything else. Because of your reckless actions, The qi went missing in Tianjiao. Shouldn't you take responsibility for this? Fu Dongshu said in a low voice, "This is an accident. Zhao Xianyang of the Jing Kingdom is also missing." Wan Yinyu raised his chin and said, "If you don't want to talk about it, then let's not talk about it." Ji Yinyue, Fu Dongshu, and Chou Tai looked at each other and said, "The Jing Kingdom is the backbone of the human race. We will not shirk our responsibilities. Don't worry, enlightened Master One. The Jing Kingdom will come up with a plan as soon as possible." Chapter 1285. No one knew what kind of determination Ji Yinyue and the others had. There is no need to talk about the sincerity of the Jing Kingdom or what kind of sincerity they had. As for the disappearance of Qi in Tianjiao, Ji Yinyue had represented the Jing Kingdom in the ancient Devil's Cave and promised to them. Not long after the 8 perfected masters left the Wuwangdam mountain range, a piece of news had already spread. Sheng's Liyuan city had fallen. Sheng's famous General Qi Hong had been killed in the formation, and only his head had been returned to Wei. The name of the capital of the Sheng Kingdom was Wei, which meant that the people of the Sheng Kingdom had a never-ending ambition. Qi Hong had previously raised a flag and said that he would use his head as a guarantee to defeat Wu Tu and capture Wanyan Zhonglu. Now, his head was indeed used as a guarantee. Liyuan City had a different master. Wu Tu's flag and Amu's flag had been officially planted in Shang's territory. However, there was one thing that was even more shocking than the result of this battle. The one who planted the flag of Wu Tu on Liyuan City was not the leader of Wu Tu's cavalry, Wanyan Zhonglu, but Qi's Chao Jie, the commander of the Qi's 9 spring soldiers, Chao Jie, who was listed in the military hall. Because of the death of Hengyang County's censor, Huang Yixing, Chao Jie was grounded at home. In other words, the main general of Mu in this battle was never Wanyan Zhonglu. The one who fought Qi Hong and ultimately defeated him was Chao Jie, the famous general of Qi. There could not be 2 generals in an army. The real Wanyan Zhonglu had been hiding into Mu's royal court all this time. After the battle ended, he came to Liyuan City and took over the defense. When 2 armies fought, the battle was based on strength, wits, and bravery. The style of the general determined the style of the army and the direction of the battle. Chao Jie imitated Wanyan Zhonglu's military style perfectly. The sharp general Qi Hong thus adopted a stance and fought with the imaginary Wanyan Zhonglu. Their weapons intersected and they fought fiercely. If one were to look at the first half of this battle alone, it could be said to be an extremely high-level battle. Both sides of the battle had displayed very brilliant battle command arts, especially in the aspect of offense, where both sides had extremely sharp edges. However, just as Qi Hong's attack was at its fiercest and he was about to decide the outcome of the battle with one strike, Mugua's side took off the sharp coat that was covering their faces, revealing the layers of dense defensive array nets underneath. Qi Hong plunged headfirst into the net, and Chao Jie decisively intercepted him, killing him within the formation. A famous general of Sheng Nation had fallen just like that. From the beginning to the end, he was facing an opponent that was beyond his knowledge. In order to achieve this, Mu and Qi had to work together. According to Qi, Chao Jie helped Wanyan Xiongla lead the troops to Baoyuan City in order to get an explanation from Qi's Tianjiao Jiangwan. But to those with a discerning eye, this was undoubtedly a joke. When Chao Jie was grounded because of Huang Yixing's case, Zhao Xianyang didn't even leave his house and didn't have any thoughts about Jiang Wang at all. Therefore, Qi and Mu worked together first, and the Mirror World platform announced that Jiang Wang was involved with the devil later. In this way, the kingdom of Qi had an even more sufficient reason to react so violently to the matter of Jiang Wang being possessed by a demon. Other than protecting the honor of the kingdom of Qi and protecting the heavens chosen of the kingdom of Qi, it was also to hide the fact that Chao Jie had secretly replaced Wanyan Zhonglu. For a person of Chao Jie's level, thousands of eyes were fixed on him, and his every move would be scrutinized repeatedly. It was really not easy to do something secretly. However, The Huang Yixing case, which Ping Ding wanted to use to set up a battle between the new and the old Qi, was an excellent opportunity. The whole world was watching how Qi Tian was in a terrible fix, and Qi Ting indeed seemed to be having a hard time dealing with it. But in reality, Qi Tian's chess piece was placed in Liyuan City. Looking at this year, first Cui Ju assassinated the emperor, then Zhang Yong wept at the temple. The death of Huang Yixing, the county supervisor of Hingyang County, was immediately used as an opportunity to incite a battle between the old and the new Qi. Pingding's move was not small, and their plan was not fierce. It could even be said that every move was fatal. However, how did Qi Tian deal with it? Facing Cui Ju assassinating the emperor and Zhang Yong weeping at the temple, Qi Tian directly overturned the chessboard and sent his troops out of Jianfeng Mountain, giving Xia a fierce slap in the face and forcing Xia to hand over Chao Jie. Once Chao Jie was handed over, Xia and Ping Ding lost the possibility of cooperation. The courage that Xia had accumulated with great difficulty was broken in one battle. Facing the battle between the old and new Qi that almost shook the foundation of the country, Qi Tian's response was to hide Chao Jie, set up a trap in the central region, and attack Jing country. With this attack between the old and new Qi, there was indeed no need to fight. The old and new Qi were all Qi people, and Qi people should fight with Jing people. What was there to fight about? They should fight to be the overlord of the world and fight to be the hero of the world. Pingding's various moves were stable, accurate, ruthless, and accurate. However, in contrast to Qi Emperor Jiangshu's moves, it became a laughable small fight. The Qi Emperor had used the various schemes and arrangements of the kingdom of Pingping as a cover for the various actions of the kingdom of Qi. Those who did not know better would think that Ping Ding was the knife in Qi Tian's hand. Otherwise, why would Xia be attacked when they contacted Xia? Qi Tian stirred up internal conflicts in Qi and let Jing country take the opportunity to attack. Then, they lost the border city of their first vassal state. From the beginning to the end, Ping Ding, which was feared by everyone, was never in Qi Tian's eyes. He could control the clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. What did it mean when Liyuan City was taken? It meant that the Mu country's passage south to the central region had been completely opened. Shun country's soft abdomen was completely exposed in front of the Mu country's army. Shun country's fertile land was under the hooves of the Mu country's iron cavalry. Shun country, the sharp knife in Jing country's hand, was about to be broken. Qi Tian did not hesitate to transfer Chao Jie, the best fighter in the world, just to help Mu country do good deeds. What did Qi Tian want? This was a question that everyone had to face and the answer that the whole world was waiting for. Outside of the vassal states, there were naturally people who had nothing to do with it. The cultivation of the official path had its own advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, it flourished and could produce powerful cultivators at a faster speed. On the other hand, it was considered by many powerful people as difficult to achieve the great Tao. There are thousands of people on the path of the world. It was not that new was good and old was rotten. Most of the existing top sects were passed down from ancient times and stuck to their Tao. Everlasting power was a clear proof of the right thing to do. In a quiet room, an ink painting of clouds and distant mountains hung on the wall. A three-legged beast furnace was steaming with green smoke. A nun was sitting in the painting. The green smoke went over her head and formed the shapes of birds, flying freely. Her charming eyes were calm at this moment. Her beautiful face was solemn at this moment. The green smoke birds and the beauty in monk robes were beautiful pictures. It was not until a voice sounded from the distant mountains that she was called back to reality. Do you regret it? The green smoke birds circled the furnace 3 times and dispersed, turning into a line of words. Warm congratulations to the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. On the other side, Qidian's book review and comment section. We've organized a lot of activities. Some are giving Qidian gift boxes. Some are giving Jiang Wang an Anshui cup. Some are giving Jiang Wang a sign. Genuine readers, please participate. Chapter 1286. There was actually someone in the distant mountain in the landscape painting. That person was actually still talking. The sound was hard to describe. If one had to describe it, it was like the ringing of a bell. There was a lingering sound in the distance. It was very calm and very sober. The listener should be self-aware and should reflect on himself. The beautiful nun said, "If it's for him, I have no regrets." The voice still floated out from the distant mountain in the painting. Can a person really have no regrets? In the future, when you see a pair of mandarin ducks crossing necks and traveling together, can a person really have no regrets? The nun was silent for a moment and said, "I have no regrets now." Silly child. The voice in the distant mountain seemed to be farther away, as if the speaker was walking further away. If you want to save someone, I'll allow you. If you want to settle him back to the sect, I'll also allow you. I'll even help you cover up your traces, erase the mysteries of heaven, help you treat your injuries, and boil medicine. I won't ask what you want to do, but you have to know what you're doing. The lingering sound lingered in the air and eventually disappeared. The kneeling nun put her hands on the mat and lowered her head deeply. The mountain in the ink painting was farther away and the clouds were lower. Suddenly, rain was about to fall. After a long time, True Jade raised her head and looked at the birds formed by the green smoke above her head. There was some inexplicable joy on her face. "I'm like a bird," she said with a smile. This smile was enough to shake the spring and make the flowers and the moon lose their color. Unfortunately, no one could see it in this small room. It was so beautiful that it was lonely. The flowers bloomed and withered, and the smile could not last forever. She thought of something and stopped smiling. Her jade-like hand moved gently and took a ceramic lid. She covered the three-legged beast-shaped incense burner, and the birds scattered. She sighed softly. Unfortunately, it's only green smoke. When the moon was high in the sky, True Jade returned to her room. She came back a little late tonight. As usual, she tested the medicine and brought it to the bedside. As usual, she poured it into Jiang Wang's mouth. The medicine was still very unpleasant. The difference was that Jiang Wang no longer frowned and True Jade no longer smiled. After the medicine was poured, True Jade sat back at the tea table and poured a cup of tea for herself. At this time, she was facing the window and facing the bed. Unfortunately, the window was closed and the moonlight could not be seen. The person on the bed lay stiffly and did not look at her. The tea was slightly bitter, but not as bitter as the medicine. After slowly taking a few sips, she looked at the fine texture of the window and asked faintly, "What were you thinking when you first saw me?" Jiang Wang's voice came from behind. "I don't remember." It was an expected answer. Yuzhen did not like to drink tea. Although she had tasted the 8 Notes tea, she still felt that the tea was too astringent. She pushed the teacup aside and took out a crane-beaked jade flask from her storage box. She gently shook it, and the fragrance of wine immediately filled the room. She took 2 sips from the spout. He then asked, "Do you drink?" "No, thanks," Jiang Wang said calmly. True Jade suddenly got up. Her jade-like fingers hooked around the ear of the pot, and she swaggered back to the bedside. Her face was a little flushed, and her beautiful eyes seemed drunk. Although he was wearing a monk's robe and a monk's hat, it couldn't hide his elegance. She looked into Jiang Wang's eyes and asked very rudely, "What if I insist that you drink?" Jiang Wang, who was lying on the bed, was expressionless. "Then I can only drink. You know what's good for you," True Jade praised. "Open your mouth." Jiang Wang then opened his mouth. True Jade hooked the wine pot and gently turned it upside down. The jade-like wine drew a perfect arc in the air and accurately fell into Jiang Wang's mouth. "How is it?" True Jade stopped the wine and asked. Jiang Wang silently drank it. "Compared to drinking, I think we both have more important things to do," he said. Perhaps the wine was too strong, but True Jade seemed to suddenly become angry. She stretched out her other hand and used her thumb and forefinger to grab Jiang Wang's left cheek and pinched it hard. Looking at Jiang Wang's strange appearance, she laughed loudly. She laughed and asked, "You're now a fish on the chopping block. How dare you bare your teeth at me?" Jiang Wang's face was pinched, but he said very calmly, "People are either fish on the chopping block or fish on the chopping block. Feng shui comes and goes. It's a very common thing. Some things can be compromised, and some things can't." True Jade looked at him boldly, and her hand twisted hard. "Why are you pretending to be an enlightened monk in front of me? Your face can be compromised, but your tongue can't?" Jiang Wang said indifferently, "You can do anything. Even if you kill me, I can't resist. But will this give you pleasure?" True Jade let go of his cheek and said hatefully, "You're just relying on my sincerity to you, knowing that I won't harm you. Relying on this, you're fearless and willful." Jiang Wang lowered his eyes and said, "You're right." True Jade held the wine pot in one hand and propped up the side of Jiang Wang's face with the other. She lowered her head and looked at him. "You're now a difficult person to deal with. You're not that simple and naive teenager anymore. Why don't you feign civility with me and lie to me that you're also interested in me, that you're willing to be with me day and night? So, when you recover from your injury, won't you be able to go anywhere in the world? You won't have to look at my face anymore." Jiang Wang didn't say anything. "Because you have me in your heart. You can't lie to me with this." "I don't." "Hi, you don't?" True Jade looked down at him, her beautiful eyes burning. The smell of alcohol mixed in her breath and collided with him. "Do you know what I'm going to do now?" Jiang Wang only said, "I hope you respect me." "What are you thinking?" True Jade spat softly. "Bah, stinky rogue." This bah was light, thin, and soft, like a cat's tail scratching you. Jiang Wang was speechless. True Jade gently propped herself up and straightened up. Without the slightest reluctance, she turned around and leisurely walked back. "You can go," she said. Jiang Wang stared blankly for a moment, but soon after, he reacted. His blood was rushing, and his muscles were fresh. His body's strength had already recovered, and his 5 prefectural Cs had also resumed their circulation. Although he was far from his peak, he was at least 50% of his condition. At the very least, leaving was no longer a problem. That mouthful of alcohol, just now, was like a key that opened the lock that imprisoned his body's condition. It was just that Jiang Wang had originally believed that the lock was his injury, but now it seemed that True Jade had other tricks up her sleeve. "You're too unwilling to let go of yourself. This time, your injury had to be recuperated. So, I use a little trick. Now you're free. If you want to cultivate, then cultivate. If you want to risk your life, then risk your life. No one will care about you." True Jade sat with her back to him. After she finished her unhurried explanation, she asked again, "What? You can't bear to leave?" Jiang Wang immediately got up from the bed. True Jade said again, "Your personal belongings, including those ragged clothes of yours, are all in the storage box beside the bed. Don't leave them behind and find an excuse to come find me later." Jiang Wang could only turn back to retrieve the storage box. "Jiang Wang, oh Jiang Wang." True Jade sighed. "You might as well ask yourself if you didn't have me in your heart, with your peerless talent of bravely seizing first place in the Yellow River. How could you only realize now that you've recovered your ability to move?" Jiang Wang's bent figure paused in the middle of retrieving the storage box. He only said in a muffled voice, "I don't have any peerless talent, and there are no heroes in the world. That's why I'm famous. It's normal for you to be unable to react for a while after being injured for so long." Bang! True Jade smashed the wine pot on the ground and spat out a word through gritted teeth, "Scram." Chapter 12, 87. The Cleansing Moon Nunnery was in the northeast of the state of Wei, in the southeast of the Diligent Academy. To be more precise, it was in an ancient bamboo forest that was rarely visited by humans. The bamboo forest was quiet and serene. It was not marked on the maps of the various countries. The bamboo forest was nameless, so people called it the Cleansing Moon Nunnery. As a Buddhist sect, the Cleansing Moon Nunnery was not divided into front and back like the Xiankong Temple. Instead, it opened up its vast territory to protect its believers. A temple was like a country. The Cleansing Moon Nunnery's mountain gate was hidden and not open to the world. In this regard, the Cleansing Moon Nunnery was more similar to Mount Meru. At this moment, Jiang Wang was standing in the bamboo forest, listening to the rustling of bamboo leaves. He was at a loss about the road ahead. True Jade told him to get lost, but they were in the cleansing moon nunnery after all. Therefore, she sent him out herself. It was not too complicated. She just put on a monk's robe and a cloak for him and led him out of the mountain gate. They did not meet anyone along the way. He did not know if the cleansing moon nunnery had few people or if they were all sent away. In short, it was very smooth. It was obvious that True Jade had a high status in the cleansing moon nunnery. After bringing him to the bamboo forest, she left without saying anything. Jiang Wang thought for a while. He found a secluded place and put on the tattered immortal robe so that it could absorb energy and slowly recover. Even though True Jade disdainfully called a rag, and even though it was indeed in a damaged state, it was the best Taoist robe he had on him, and he couldn't dislike it. Jiang Wang was not in a hurry to make a decision. Instead, he connected to the great void fantasy land and wanted to understand the situation outside. Needless to say, the blessed land had fallen to the 47th ranked Tiger Creek Mountain. The honor of being the #1 inner palace in the great void fantasy land was also given to Ling Yu. It seemed that Zhuo Guangshu had been working hard during this period. He should be preparing for the Mountain Sea realm. It was a pity that he could not go. Otherwise, he should let the world see the power of the #1 inner palace in the world. There were many paper crane letters. Swordsman Ning had 3, all asking when he was free to exchange pointers. Calculating the time, there were no more letters after the Mirror World platform announced that he had mastered the devil. There were 5 letters from Zhuo Guangshu. First, he asked what was going on. Then, he asked Jiang Wang to reply after reading the letters, saying that he might be able to help. The letters ended on the day Zhao Xianyang tracked them to Zhongshan. There were 9 letters from Zhong Xiansheng, and there weren't any superfluous words in them. They were all summaries of the current situation and suggestions for Jiang Wang. Those suggestions were so complicated that they simply didn't trust Jiang Wang's thoughts at all. The Son of Heaven used General Chao Jie to secretly replace Wanyan Xianglu, to kill Qi Hong and break into Liyuan City. A storm is rising in the world. If you've already been saved, it is not appropriate for you to appear in front of others for the time being. You may continue to hide. After all, your disappearance is very beneficial to our negotiations. If you're still held hostage by Zhao Xianyang, or if you're trapped somewhere else, give me your address at once. If you don't see this letter, pretend I didn't write it. He had only been recuperating for a few days, and the world had changed so drastically. It felt like a lifetime had passed. Jiang Wang and Cheng Sheng wrote a reply. There were only 9 words on the letter. Zhao Xianyang is dead. I have to leave for now. After waiting for a while, he did not receive a reply from Cheng Sheng. He left the great illusionary land. After getting his bearings, he headed for Mu country. His first target was the Xiankong Temple. From Cheng Sheng's letter, he knew what Ku Ju had done for him. Even now, Ku Ju was still looking for him. So he had to at least tell Ku Ju that he was safe. But if he went to find Ku Ju directly, he would be easily discovered by Jinghua. Secondly, Ku Ju was looking for him all over the world. His whereabouts were uncertain. If he could not reveal his identity, he might not be able to find Ku Ju. Fortunately, monk Jing Li's whereabouts were fixed. As Ku Ju's beloved disciple, Jing Li should have a way to contact Ku Ju. Besides, it would be easy to return to Qi after going to Xiankong Temple. It was a safer choice. But going from moon-cleansing bamboo forest to Xiankong Temple was not that simple. The Battle of Liyuan City was over, but it was just the beginning of the war. Mu Country's war. After Mu Country took Liyuan City, both Mu Country and Shang Country kept increasing their troops. Shang Country and the Jing Country behind, it would never accept the outcome of Liyuan City. And Mu Country had finally broken Shang Country's blade edge and was about to conquer the central region. Naturally, they would not give in. What would be the result of a head-on clash between the two countries? The scorched valley plains might be the answer. The vast space between Jing Country and Mu Country, including the northern region and the central region, could become a battlefield. Countless pairs of eyes were watching this place. For safety reasons, Jiang Wang did not plan to enter this area. In this way, going around the rear of Mu country and going through Chu country to enter the eastern region was the most reliable route. He couldn't just go through the long river and run to the southern region, then circle back to the eastern region. That would be even further and less safe. Besides, if he went through Mu country, he could also meet Little Five and tell him that he was safe, lest he worry. At first glance, this route seemed complicated, but it was the result of Jiang Wang's careful analysis of the situation and careful consideration. When Zhong Xiansheng replied, it was at night. At that time, Jiang Wang was wearing a cloak and an ordinary brown hemp robe. He had already traveled a long distance. He had already changed out of the monk robe that True Jade had given him. It wasn't something embarrassing like wearing female clothes. The gray monk robe was gender-neutral and didn't distinguish between men and women. It was just that Mu country was a country that pursued the divine Tao, and Song Tu God was the most powerful. He didn't have a good impression of monks or Taoist priests. The reason he was dressed like this was purely to avoid trouble. He found a secluded place and entered the great illusionary realm again. Then, he saw Cheng Gengsheng's fat paper crane flying over. Jiang Wang didn't read the letter and directly opened the Star River space. Not long after, the two of them met again in the dazzling Star River. The Star River stretched across a small pavilion. The two of them sat facing each other. There were no tears in their eyes, only the joy of surviving a disaster. Cheng Gengsheng looked at him with a strange expression. "You killed Zhao Xinyang?" Jiang Wang sighed. "I didn't have a choice." Cheng Gengsheng's fat face scrunched up. "Can you not boast so much in front of your own brother?" Jiang Wang. This time, he really didn't want to boast. Yes, he did feel somewhat regretful about Zhao Xuanyang's death. But there was no other way. The truth was already like boasting. Who could he blame? Jiang Wang could only sigh again. "You don't understand me. I don't blame you. I only blame myself for being too strong. It's beyond the scope of your understanding. Enough is enough." Cheng Gengsheng slammed the stone table, the fat on his face trembling. "Fine," Jiang Wang said helplessly. "Actually, the reason I was able to kill him was because stop." Cheng Gengsheng hurriedly gestured for him to stop. "I don't want to hear how you killed him. I'm afraid of ruining my brother's pure image in my heart." Even though he understood that Cheng Gengsheng didn't want to pry into his secrets, these words, why did they sound so strange? Cheng Gengsheng said, "Right now, we're just discussing the aftermath of this matter." Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then said, "I think it's better if I explain everything to you in detail. That way, you won't be thinking too much about it." "Huh?" Cheng Gengsheng said in surprise. "If you don't know what I'm thinking, how can you say that I'm thinking too much about it?" As he looked at this familiar chubby face, his fist began to itch. "Let's talk somewhere else. I don't want to." After all, he was someone who had survived a calamity. When he looked at the world again, he was much more tolerant. "I knew that you were all idiots, and I knew that you'd be the same when you saw me." Jiang Wang loosened his fists and smiled. The situation at the time was like this. Just like that, he recounted everything that had happened in the ancient devil's cave. He told him that Zhao Xianyang had been ordered to kill him, the blood-maned true devil song Wanqi, the seven grudges devil art, the black-robed devil race. Only True Jade. For some reason, he couldn't explain, he only said that she was an old acquaintance of his from the Cleansing Moon Nunnery. "You're saying that you have a true devil in your hands?" Cheng Gengsheng was dumbfounded. Even though he was from a famous sect and had seen a lot, he couldn't help but marvel at Jiang Wang's luck. Thinking about it, Jiang Wang had survived the battle between Zhuang Chengqian and the white-bone evil god to capture the blood-maned true devil. How thrilling it had been. "Currently, I can only summon it in the ancient devil's cave," Jiang Wang corrected. "Unless it's absolutely necessary, I won't try it again. So it's almost as good as nothing." Since he had already caught the attention of that terrifying black-robed devil race, it would be foolish to think of the blood-maned true devil as a reliable method. Cheng Gengsheng suddenly laughed. "How interesting. 8 perfected masters of the present age went to the Wawangdu mountain range together and didn't leave a single trace behind. In the end, they came up with a result that was miles off the mark. It's not exactly miles off the mark, Jiang Wang said. There was indeed a third party involved, but that third party was in the myriad world's desolate tomb. Yes, Chung Gongsheng smiled. And there's also that old acquaintance of yours who can fool the perfected masters. At this point, he narrowed his eyes. Why do I feel like this old acquaintance is another Qiao Yanjun? Jiang Wang only said, I don't want to waste my time with you. Chung Gongsheng thought for a bit and said, then this is what happened. In order to avoid Ku Ju's pursuit, Zhao Xinyang held you hostage and hid in the ancient devil's cave. You stayed in the ancient devil cave for a few days. Then, for some reason, a true devil suddenly crossed over to this world. Zhao Xinyang drew his sword and fought him. During the battle, your organs were pierced by a spear and your 5 palace seas were shattered. You fell into a coma and didn't know anything. When you woke up, you found yourself in a barren mountain. Your injuries had already been treated, but you didn't know who saved you. You also didn't know what happened in that devil's den. I don't know anything, Jiang Wang asked. Of course you don't know, Chung Gongsheng said. Otherwise, how do you explain your blood, main true devil? Why didn't you say that Zhao Xinyang was dead and his body was taken to the myriad world's desolate tomb by the true devil? Chung Gongsheng coldly said, it's better to leave some suspense about his life and death, in case someone goes crazy and you don't know anything. Will others believe that? Of course, because you must be innocent, especially in this situation, especially in the current situation, Zhong Xiansheng asked. As for the others, does it matter if they believe it or not? After this, is there anyone who can soul-search you to prove your innocence? Jiang Wang bitterly smiled. If there's a way to prove my innocence without harming my spirit, I'm willing to give it a try. Chung Gongsheng heard the bitterness in his words. Up to this point, the most innocent person in the entire incident was Jiang Wang himself. But now, he had to lie to protect himself because he already understood that in this world, even if you were innocent, you couldn't be innocent. He could be falsely accused of colluding with a devil for no reason. Bloodmane true devil Song Wanshi was enough to consign him to eternal damnation. Jiang Wang. Chung Gongsheng looked at him and said seriously, you're too dazzling. You don't even realize how dazzling you are. Wang Yiwu was defeated by you, and the Tianya stage was your stepping stone. After the Yellow River meeting, you're already the rising sun in the sky. Do you know how many pairs of eyes are watching you? Everyone can see you, and everyone will see you. The moment their gazes fall, the effect has already taken place. Kindness is gentle, but malice is dazzling. Therefore, kindness is often forgotten after seeing it, but malice is accumulated and infinitely magnified. It will make you depressed, make you doubt yourself, make you feel wronged, and make you angry. If you feel that you're the enemy of the whole world, you might as well look around you. There are many people who support you, and many people who believe in you. He pointed at himself. At least, I'm a few 100 pounds of fat meat, and I'll always be on your side. He didn't expect Chung Gongsheng to say something like this. Perhaps the pursuit at the Mirror World stage had left him with lingering fear. It was indeed a very difficult journey from Zhaoheng City to the ancient Devil's Cave in the Wuing mountain range. The most difficult part was not facing a powerful opponent or encountering danger, but having to bear a bad reputation and endure too much hostility at the same time. It was the kind of grievance that couldn't be appealed to, the kind of resentment that said, how innocent am I? Being condemned by thousands of people would end without a cause. Being hated by thousands of people, how could one be lucky enough to escape? Hatred, loathing, and injustice would either kill a person or their heart. After being attacked by these negative emotions, it would often leave behind a scene of devastation. Even if one survived, they would be a person who was unrecognizable. Anger, resentment, and hatred would arise from this. It was very common. A few 100 pounds of fat meat. Jiang Wang sucked in a breath of cold air. No wonder it's so greasy. I really missed the time when I first met you. Chung Gung Sheng gritted his teeth. Jiang Wang raised his eyebrows. Back then, I was still spoiling you, right? Chung Gung Sheng said faintly. Back then, you couldn't beat me. Oh, Jiang Wang laughed. You want to beat me up? Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Let's go on the sword discourse arena. I'll let you use one hand. Using one hand in battle would reduce one's combat strength by almost half. The fat on Chung Gung Sheng's face trembled. He was obviously tempted. Let me use the hand that holds the sword. Jiang Wang said very openly. I already said that I'll give you a chance. Whichever hand you want me to use, I'll use that hand. Chung Gung Sheng suddenly sneered. So you've already achieved heaven's sanctum. I'd like to, but how could it be so easy? Jiang Wang said innocently. Chung Gung Sheng laughed loudly. Originally, I only had a 30% chance, but now I have a 100% chance. Jiang Wang, you look like a dog, but you don't do anything. You're playing dirty with me. Jiang Wang couldn't figure out how he had exposed himself. He couldn't help but ask, what did you find out? Chung Gung Sheng's laughter suddenly stopped. He said coldly, now. Jiang Wang was speechless. This series of lies really made one's teeth itch. Chung Gung Sheng asked again, since you've already achieved heaven's sanctum, have you engraved the Taoist technique of the fifth sanctum? Jiang Wang shook his head truthfully. I haven't had time to engrave the fourth sanctum. I haven't found a suitable one yet. Okay. Chung Gung Sheng smiled. Find a place to hide first and hide your identity. I'll go and ask you for some benefits. Jiang Wang was stunned. Who are you going to ask? Serves you right for being poor. Chung Gung Sheng's face was full of disappointment. Didn't I already tell you? The Qi thought you were putting pressure on Jingguo in the name of seeking justice. So you can't show yourself in front of people right now. You have to hide yourself well and play the role of the missing Tianjiao. I know. Jiang Wang nodded. I'm pretending right now. Chung Gung Sheng let out a long sigh. You're the world's #1 inner sanctum, Jiang Qingyang, whose integrity is unparalleled. You're worthy of the heavens and the earth. You're the peerless Tianjiao, the best man in the world. How can you hide and let the world laugh at you? Jiang Wang didn't care. Hey, what's the big deal? Chung Gung Sheng interrupted him very seriously. Unless you pay more. Jiang Wang instantly sat up straight and replied in the same serious tone, You're right. I've sacrificed too much. Chapter 1288. Wow, the divine beast summoning technique. On the soft cloud ground, the little girl, who looked like she was carved from jade, had a taut expression on her face. Her 10 fingers moved swiftly as if they were flying, changing a few fancy moves in succession. In the end, she formed a sword finger and pointed forward in a serious manner. Urgent as the law commands. Come. Woof. With a sudden bark, a cloud blanket was lifted, and a gray puppy jumped out. A woof. It bared its teeth, looking very majestic. Sitting in front of her was a beautiful girl. She supported her forehead with her hand and said helplessly, Jiang Anan, is this the secret technique that you worked so hard to develop after not practicing calligraphy for a few days? What do you think? Jiang Anan said happily, Am I awesome? I don't know if you're awesome or not. Yi Qingyu sighed. Anyway, I have a terrible headache. Jiang Anan squeezed in front of her and pouted. I saw that you were unhappy, so I wanted to make you laugh. Actually, I've already caught up on my homework. She held her precious squirrel box and took out a few stacks of paper from it. On them were large and neat words. Look. Yi Qingyu rubbed her hair and said gently, I'm anxious about my cultivation. I'm not unhappy. I'll ask my brother to teach you later. Jiang Anan waved her hand and said generously, My brother is awesome. Yi Qingyu said casually, When it comes to cultivation, my father is also good. Jiang Anan blinked her big eyes and asked with her head tilted, My brother is the best in the world. What's your rank, Uncle Yi? Yi Qingyu was speechless. It was difficult to explain to a child the difference between the inner mansion stage and the truth stage. The difference between the best in the world and the best in the world was also not so easy to explain. Moreover, it was a beautiful thing for a sister to worship her brother, but it was not necessary to break it. She could only reluctantly say, "Okay, I'll ask your brother later." Jiang Anan thought for a while and asked, "Is Chu far?" "Quite far." Yiqingyu asked why. "My brother said that he went to Chu." The people of Chu were crying and begging him to give them some pointers on that mystery. Jiang Anan said as she summoned her little cloud crane. She spread it out on the ground and started writing. "I'll ask my brother to bring you a gift." As she wrote, she turned her head to look at Yi Qingyu, her eyes sparkling. "What's good to eat in Chu?" Yi Qingyu was touched at first, but then she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Is this gift for you or for me?" Jiang Anan chuckled and drew a big circle on the letter. In the circle, he wrote, "Lots of delicious food." Next to it, he added a note, 2 portions. After he finished writing, he looked at it with satisfaction and rolled on the ground happily. Woof! Dumb Gray intimately came over and rubbed its head against her arm. It even made a whining sound. She reached out and pushed him away. "There's nothing for you. You didn't even hide well and were discovered by many people at a glance." Dumb Gray thought it was a compliment and shook its head happily. "I'll let you die of stupidity." Jiang Anan gently folded the letter and threw it into the air. It then turned into a cloud crane and circled around a few times. Dumb Gray jumped up and wanted to pounce, but was stopped by Jiang Anan. When a cloud crane didn't know the exact location, it needed the response of the recipient to send a letter. Only then could it travel thousands of miles. If the cloud crane couldn't find the recipient, it could only drift in the place where it last received the response. That place could only be the Zhongshan state. After Zhao Xinyang captured Jiang Wang, he cut off all means of communication with the outside world. Yi Qingyu put her hands behind her back and secretly cast a camouflage spell to prevent Jiang Anan from discovering that her cloud crane wasn't flying in the direction of Chu. Thinking of this, Yi Qingyu couldn't help but feel a little worried. Jiang Anan looked at her and was very concerned. "Why are you still unhappy?" Adults always thought that they could hide their feelings from children, but in fact, they often couldn't. Children were the most sensitive to emotions. "Maybe I didn't sleep well last night," Yi Qingyu explained. She controlled her expression and smiled gently. "I'm fine." Jiang Anan thought for a while, gritted her teeth, and said with determination, "I'll share my brother with you." "Ah." Yi Qingyu's face suddenly turned red. How? Let him be your brother too." Jiang Anan had an "I'm great" expression. "Then you can be as happy as I am." Yi Qingyu woodenly replied with an "oh," and then recovered her calmness. "You should go practice calligraphy." Jiang Anan, ? Jiang Anan, who was scolded instead of comforted, pouted and left. Dumb Gray, who didn't have any eyesight, followed her and left. Jiang Wang, who didn't know that he had been entrusted with an important task, set foot on the grassland for the first time. As far as the eye could see, the sky and earth were vast and boundless. It was like walking out of a cramped room, pushing aside the cobwebs, clouds, and thorns, and suddenly experiencing the bosom of nature. It was so vast and boundless that it could contain the most free soul. It was autumn, and the grassland had lost its verdure. The grass clothes that filled the vision were green with a tinge of yellow, and yellow with red. The afternoon sun fell, and it was a gorgeous autumn. At this time, Jiang Wang, wearing a cloak and hemp clothes, looked like a lonely traveler, walking on the boundless grassland with a cane. The cloak was the one that belonged to the fat and thin devil man, and the cane he was using was Grandma Bijou's thinking cane. Speaking of which, there was also a cloud muzuin that came with the thinking cane, in which there was an extremely poisonous 5-colored fish. But Jiang Wang had hardly used it. Because it was so poisonous, it was known as death by a kiss. Jiang Wang wouldn't take it out to use, but in the few times when he was in real danger, it was useless to take it out, and he couldn't even take it out. Therefore, after this 5-colored fish followed Jiang Wang, it actually had a rare free time. It almost didn't do any work and spent every day in the cloud, muzuin leisurely. It was a typical freeloader. Compared to Dumb Gray, it was simply a salted fish and a lazy dog. Of course, there was still a difference. Jiang Wang didn't use the 5-colored fish, and Dumb Gray didn't use it. Jiang Wang strolled on the boundless grassland, passing by wild horses, cows, sheep, herdsmen, and Heisey. It was rare for him to be free of tension, and there was a smile on his face. He didn't think about the situation in the world, didn't think about the hatred engraved in the Zhuang country, didn't think about the trade-offs, gains and losses and reputation. There was a rare kind of freedom. The world is vast, and my heart is carefree. He was looking forward to meeting Xiao again. He wondered how that kid was getting along with the Mu country's princess. He heard from Xiao that Uncle Deng was now a horse rider and was living a peaceful life. He wondered where he was selling goods and how much money he earned every day. The world was full of hardships, and he had to seize every bit of beauty. Only then could he cross the sea of bitterness with a torch. Meeting old friends was one of the reasons. Chapter 1289. The spear of the black-clothed demon in the ancient devil's cave and the days of recuperating in the cleansing moon nunnery could be considered as forcibly restraining the horse's hooves. Jiang Wang, who had not dared to stop for a moment and was unwilling to stop for a breath, had to stop and loosen his taut bowstring. The bow must be nourished, and the sword must be nourished. People were not objects, so they should have a degree of relaxation. But as Yu Zhan said, Jiang Wang was too unwilling to let himself go. Cutting through thorns and thorns, he would never shrink back. When he defeated the enemy, it was inevitable that he would hurt himself. When he was strong, he could cover up everything. When he was gloomy, it was inevitable that he would be covered in scars. Wasn't the days of rigidly lying in a quilt a kind of relaxation? It was like waking up after a long sleep, and everything was awakened at this time. Walking freely on this boundless grassland, Jiang Wang held a cane in his left hand and a book in his right hand. From time to time, he glanced at it and read an entire page. Before coming to the grassland, he bought the book in a roadside bookstore. Cheng Gengsheng wanted him to hide his tracks and play the role of the missing Tianjiao to facilitate the negotiation with Qi Jing. After surviving a disaster, he did not intend to do anything big. On the long journey to Xiankong Temple, he just picked up the idea of reading 10,000 books from before. Recuperating was one thing, morning and evening classes were another, pondering Taoist techniques was another, sculpting swordsmanship was another, feeling the world's scenery was another, and reading was also another. Everything was in the process of cultivation. Understanding oneself inwardly and the world outwardly was the process of human growth. The book Jiang Wang was reading at this time was called White Tiger's Doctrine. It was not a military classic, but a Confucian classic that was known as talking about the similarities and differences of the five classics, unifying the meaning of the modern classics. Of course, its so-called modern classics was already when the book was written in the past. Unifying was naturally only at that time. It did not and could not reach the present world. Now that he read it, it was inevitable that there would be some inappropriate parts. Once when he discussed reading with his friends, Zhao Weiyan suggested that he read this book, saying, "This book is a classic and will not be outdated even after 100 years. And it's precisely because there are some untimely places that you won't be caught in the trap." What he meant was that those points that contradicted modern Confucianism could help Jiang Wang break free from his shackles and prevent him from falling into them. This was an appropriate suggestion because he knew that Jiang Wang was not a Confucian disciple. Zhao Weiyan had also said that it was best to read the Spring and Autumn Dew before reading the White Tiger Tongyi. Because of these two Confucian classics, the former had inherited the latter. However, Jiang Wang couldn't buy it at the bookstore, so he had to read it first. In addition, after Jiang Wang expressed his desire to study, Li Longchuan also recommended some military classics. Su Xiangqian enthusiastically recommended his own compilation of Shinxiu poetry. He said that the poems he wrote could be called divine. As the saying goes, one's intention can win over a sentence, and the spirit can win over one's intention. He, Su Xiangqian, was proud of his talent in poetry and had never lost to anyone in his life. In short, this poetry collection was still lying in the innermost part of the storage box. Jiang Wang had never had the courage to open it. He had completely concealed his former identity. His sword was also kept in the storage box. Only the white jade on his waist was still hanging. Anyway, for many people, it was just an ordinary piece of jade. The world's #1 inner palace, the cheese green sheep, they all seemed to be stories of another person. He was just a lonely gull in heaven and earth, a traveler in the human world. He cultivated, read, and enjoyed the scenery, all the way to the supreme palace on the boundless grassland. By chance, he encountered a herd of wild horses. Jiang Wang's childishness was aroused. He used the Xingxi staff, the staff to control animals, to subdue a jujube red horse. This horse was not as smart as Yin Zhao, but it could be considered a top-quality horse among ordinary horses. Sitting on the horse, he also imitated those scholars, shaking his head and reciting the classics. "Hey, Moi is here," a grassland girl with a few freckles on her face shouted from afar. "Are you selling this horse?" She was holding a handful of fodder to feed the cattle. After seeing Jiang Wang's horse, she was very excited. She immediately jumped on a short yellow horse and rode it closer. Her strong and vigorous posture made people's eyes light up. Although her horse was short, it ran very fast. Its ponytail and the girl's ponytail swayed together in the wind. "Moi is here" was a grassland language, meaning traveler from afar. Speaking of which, the languages of the various countries in the world were not very different. At least for transcendent cultivators, the differences were very easy to grasp. The languages of many countries had evolved from the foundation of Jing country's language, and the language of Jing country was originally developed from the language of the Taoist era. It was no wonder Jing was proud of its history and called the Taoist sect the sect of myriad flows. Of course, words were originally used to describe Tao. Due to different people's different understanding of Tao, there were differences in the words. This was the soil that gave birth to other languages that were different from the Taoist language family. Apart from the accent, the main difference in Mu's language was that it inherited some nouns from the Tsang Tu divine language. For example, Moi is here and are true. As for the nouns that were not part of the divine language family, they were a natural evolution of the grassland people's long history and belonged to another language system. The world was vast, and there were many countries. Those who were not learned would not be able to distinguish these differences. Of course, Jiang Wang was not learned enough, but he knew that after Zhao Ruqing developed in Mu, he had deliberately memorized some common terms of the grassland, so he was not at a loss. He shook the book in his hand. I'm not selling. As he spoke, the grassland girl had already urged her horse forward. Her eyes were eagerly looking at his horse. It seemed that she really liked it. She opened her hand wide and stretched it in front of Jiang Wang. "I'll trade you 5 cows. Jiang Wang calmly continued, shaking the book. I'm not trading. Hey, you scholar." The girl with a few freckles on her face put her hands on her waist. "I'm not asking you to suffer a loss. What will it take for you to trade? Listen to this title, Scholar." Jiang Wang's heart was filled with joy. She had only studied for a few days, but she already had the temperament of a scholar. Sure enough, things like talent could not be hidden. He obviously did not realize how thought-provoking his current appearance of a cloak, hemp clothes, and a dragon-headed staff. He could only make do with the book in his hand to guess his identity. Jiang Wang thought that he should be closer to the image of a Confucian scholar. What books he studied was the closest to the Tao. He racked his brains and thought, this is not a problem of suffering a loss or not. Confucius said that a gentleman does not take what others like. The girl scolded. Confucius said that a gentleman should fulfill the beauty of others. Why don't you listen? He had met his match. He did not expect that there would be a knowledgeable scholar on the grassland who was familiar with the Confucian classics. This girl looked ordinary, but he did not expect her to be so learned. Jiang Wang became serious and used 120% of his ability. Confucius said, "It's a pleasure to have friends coming from afar. Even if you don't treat me well, you shouldn't take a fancy to my horse as soon as you meet. How is this the etiquette of treating a guest? Don't say such useless things." The girl waved her hand. "Just tell me, do you want more money?" "Yeah." Jiang Wang felt that he had the upper hand, so he took advantage of the situation and said in a clear and righteous voice, "I regard money as dumb. I can't move the poor. I can't bend the mighty. I can't be corrupted by wealth." After he finished speaking, he even waved his hemp sleeve. No need to say more. The girl looked at him for a long time. "You're crazy." She patted her horse and left. Jiang Wang was speechless. He couldn't help but say to her back, "We gentlemen will never speak ill of you. We debate the classics, but we are not in the mood to scold people." Chapter 1290. You call this scripture debate? When Jiang Wang turned around on horseback, he saw a young scholar with a pair of different-sized eyes. This person walked over from the distance, wearing a Confucian robe and carrying a bookcase. He was dressed like a typical traveling Confucian scholar and was looking at him with a frown. Li Gui was embarrassed to meet Li Gui. Fortunately, Jiang Wang was wearing a cloak and didn't have to worry about others seeing his expression. He snorted and arrogantly turned his horse around to show that he didn't want to bother with this person. "Hey!" The person's figure flashed and blocked the horse. "Don't go. Didn't you have a lot of fun teasing the little girl? Didn't you want to debate the scriptures? I'll debate with you." He sneered. "But first, I'll teach you what scripture debate is." Jiang Wang thought about it and realized that he wasn't teasing the little girl. He was seriously debating the scriptures. However, the other party had a strong sense of justice, so he let him be. He didn't say anything and continued to turn his horse around. The scholar's figure flashed and blocked the horse again. He said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "I'm a Confucian scholar. When I'm outside, I'm not afraid to compare notes. Why do you always want to leave? Which academy are you from? Which great Confucian did you study under? Which scripture are you from?" He didn't understand what scripture he was talking about. Jiang Wang was annoyed and said casually, "I'm from Green Cliff Academy, okay? I don't have time to bother with you today. Goodbye." "Oh, what a coincidence." The Confucian scholar said arrogantly, "I'm Fong Zongwen, a disciple of Green Cliff Academy. Why don't you take off your cloak so that we can get to know each other?" He emphasized the words fellow disciple. Obviously, he believed that Jiang Wang was the one who ruined the reputation of Confucian disciples and reached out to take off his cloak. Jiang Wang retreated a few steps. "Fellow Taoist, you can talk, but don't touch me." "Huh? Fellow Taoist again? You should at least call me fellow disciple or something. That's more like it." Fong Zongwen aggressively pressed forward. "You don't want to take off your cloak. Are you ashamed? Where did this monster come from? How dare he pretend to be a Confucian disciple?" Jiang Wang rolled up his sleeves and said, "Do you really want to debate the sutras with me?" "Now, what's the matter?" Fong Zongwen rolled up his sleeves in an imposing manner and sneered. "You want to fight because you can't win? Guilty conscience? Do you know what the 6 arts of gentlemen are?" "Ah." As he spoke, his right eye was punched. Bang! Next was his left eye. His vision went dark, and he took another punch to the abdomen. His entire body arched on the ground, and it was as if the entire world had started to bend. Another uppercut hit his chin, and the world became flat again. A long period of crackling sounds passed. Fong Zongwen was lying on the grass with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He stared blankly at the sky. The entire bookcase fell apart, and the books scattered all over the floor. There was also a book called Spring and Autumn Dew. It was the book that Jiang Wang didn't buy, so he picked it up. At the same time, he casually said, "Junior Marshall Brother, Senior Marshall Brother won the scripture debate. I believe you have nothing to say. Senior Marshall Brother will lend you this book. I'll return it to you when you're done." These books could be bought anywhere. They didn't contain any cultivation knowledge, so they weren't expensive. Fong Zongwen didn't say anything. It seemed that he agreed. Jiang Wang nodded in satisfaction. He leaped onto his horse and headed east. He didn't hit him too hard. Fong Zongwen looked miserable, but it was all superficial wounds. He would be able to jump around after a while. Now, he was lying there and refusing to get up. It was purely because of his pride. Returning the book was easy. Since Fong Zongwen was also a disciple of the Green Cliff Academy, he could return it to Su Xianqian later. Read books, ride horses, and beat people up. Life was so fun. The Sky Mirror, also known as the Divine Mirror Lake, was the center of the Eastern grasslands. The supreme royal court of the Mu Kingdom was right next to the Sky Mirror. Jiang Wang set off from the moon-cleansing bamboo forest. The first place he entered was the southwest part of the grasslands, so he was heading east. Speaking of which, the war between Mu and Shang didn't seem to affect the grasslands at all. The herders' lives were still peaceful. To a certain extent, this reflected the difference in national power between Mu and Shang. He was afraid that the situation in the grasslands would only become tense when the Jing Kingdom sent their troops into the battlefield. As for how many troops the Jing Kingdom could send to Shang, Qi's attitude was very important. Jiang Wang threw these thoughts to the back of his mind and continued to move forward. On the way, he passed by the freckled girl's house. It was a huge yurt. In this tribe, it was quite eye-catching. This meant that her family background was not bad. She was one of the best in the tribe. At this time, the herder girl was brushing her horse in front of the yurt. She looked at the red horse that galloped past with eager eyes. However, since the deal had failed, she didn't say anything. She also didn't have the thought of gathering her tribesmen to plunder. Although many strong young men were at home at this time, it was enough to teach them a lesson. The people of the grasslands were straightforward. If they liked something, they would say it. At the same time, they had their own rules. It was the horse bandits who plunder recklessly, not the children of Tsang Tu God. The feeling of riding a horse on the grasslands was very carefree. The sky was clear and golden, and the mood was also relaxed. Jiang Wang was thinking about what to do after meeting Zhao Ruqing and Uncle Deng. He had a smile on his face. Suddenly, his vision darkened and the whole sky darkened. In an instant, frost clouds covered the sky. In another instant, snow fell from the sky. The temperature plummeted. At the same time, a roar shook the world. In the distance, there was a vast expanse of white. It was difficult to see one's fingers. The falling snow was swept by the wind and whistled. White-haired wind. White-haired wind was in winter. The wind blew the snow and often swept the sky and the ground. It was one of the disasters that herders feared the most. However, it was autumn now. How could there be a white-haired wind? Moreover, the snow fell so suddenly and the wind blew so suddenly. The red horse under him was trembling. A moment ago, its mane was fluttering, and it was majestic and vigorous. Now it was kneeling on the ground, intimidated by the power of heaven and earth. Jiang Wang lifted it up and turned around to fly away. There must be a reason behind the sudden appearance of a white-haired wind of this scale. There were strong masters on the grassland. Jiang Wang, who hid his identity, didn't want to cause any trouble. However, the small tribe that he just passed by didn't have any extraordinary power. It was obviously impossible for them to withstand such a sudden, white-haired wind. He couldn't ignore it when he still had the strength to do so. Wei Lanju was the legitimate daughter of the chief of the Chaha tribe. Their tribe belonged to the Huerlian tribe. The Tu clan, which was above the Huerlian tribe, was the noblest true blood tribe on the grassland. She was brushing the horse. After brushing the horse, she continued to feed the cattle. These were her cattle, her horse, and her dowry. She had to take good care of them. But all of a sudden, the sky darkened, and the surroundings became a vast expanse of whiteness. How could she not know that the white-haired wind was coming? However, the white-haired wind only appeared in winter. In her memory, it was the first time it appeared in autumn. She was not prepared at all. In the past, before the white-haired wind came, most of the cultivators in the Supreme Royal Court will be notified in advance so that they could settle down all the cattle and sheep. Wei Lanju was stunned in front of the yurt. She didn't move, and her heart was as cold as ice. The cattle, the sheep, the dowry, and the tribe were all gone. In extreme fear and helplessness, she suddenly saw a figure holding a red horse descending from the sky and blocking the wind and snow. The man was actually holding the horse. It was the strange man who dropped the book bag with her. At this moment, seeing the man, he just put the red horse behind him and stretched out his palm to press forward. the wind and snow that filled the sky actually stopped for him. Chapter 1291. Heaven and earth were white as the wind howled. A person stood alone in front of the wind and snow, separated from the world by a single hand. Wu Yanlanju would never forget this scene. Looking at the back of the cloaked figure, she felt the power and unshakable strength before the natural disaster. She actually thought of the sacred mountain, and her gaze became dazed for a moment. In the entire Chaha tribe, the herdsmen who were about to flee or wait for death came over one after another. They all came behind the cloaked figure, chanting words like God Song Tu's protection as they knelt on the ground devoutly. In front of the miracle of the vast snowstorm being blocked by a mighty force, the herdsmen began to sing an ancient ballad, majestic Cheonglu Mountain, holding up the sky of the grassland. Great God Song Tu, shining down on your kind people. From the plains of the east to the plains of the west, from the eyes of the sea to the twilight years. These herdsmen did not have extraordinary power, and there was nothing magical about this ballad. It was just devoutly sung, and it had the power to soothe people's hearts. Jiang Wang faced the wind and snow. In front of his right hand, the frosty white Buzhou wind spun quietly. In the snowstorm that covered the sky, this wisp of wind looked so delicate, but it was like a candle that lit up the night, stopping the wind and snow from getting any closer. The Buzhou wind was known as the most lethal of the 8 winds. It could even tear apart the violent wind of the yellow Sarira, so it was not difficult for it to resist a sudden snowstorm. However, the range of this white-haired wind was too wide. At least, Jiang Wang could not sense its limits. He could only protect this small tribe that he could see. He could not trace back to its roots and cut off its source. In a vast snowstorm, a figure slowly came over. It was not accurate to say that it was slow. This person was very fast, but in the area covered by the white-haired wind, there was an illusion that it was difficult to move, and he seemed to be slower. Jiang Wang guessed that he should be an expert sent by the Supreme Royal Court to provide disaster relief. Because the other party's goal was very clear, and he was heading straight for this tribe. From afar, he saw that Jiang Wang had already protected this place and immediately turned around. Only a white round plate shot over in the wind. Moe is here. After the white hair wind disperses, you can take this token to the Supreme Royal Court to receive your reward. Just find Dark Feather. His voice fell into Jiang Wang's ears in the wind and snow. Sangyu was not a person's name. It was an organization in charge of public security in Mu Nation. It was similar to Qi's inspection office, but its functions were more complicated. It also had to patrol the grasslands regularly, adjudicate disputes among herdsmen, and so on. These 2 words were the feathers of the goshawk, meaning the wings of God. The transcendent cultivators under Dark Feather were called Flying Teeth. Jiang Wang glanced at the round plate in his hand and saw that it seemed to be made of animal bones. It was snow-white in color, and there was a floating feather engraved on the front. It was indeed the symbol of the flying fawn. He put it away with a flip of his hand, not minding it at all. However, the appearance of this flying fawn made Jiang Wang even more aware of the suddenness of this white hair wind. Clearly, even Blue Feather could not foresee this in advance. Only now did he hastily react. If Jiang Wang hadn't been nearby, it would have been hard to say what would have happened to the Chaha tribe. With the Supreme Court's control over the grasslands, such a thing should not have happened. No matter what kind of evil or disaster it was, how could the Supreme Court allow it to easily affect ordinary herdsmen? However, Jiang Wang did not intend to investigate. There were many capable people in Mu Nation. He was just passing by the grasslands to see an old friend. He had no other requests. This white-haired wind came quickly and left quickly as well. It only lasted for about half an hour before it dissipated. The world was vast, and there was a fresh smell in the air after the rain. It seemed that Blue Feather had already controlled the source. Jiang Wang put away the Buzhou wind and turned around to see hundreds of herdsmen kneeling behind him. There were men, women, old, and young. Excluding those who had gone missing and those who had not returned, the entire Chaha tribe was here. The old man kneeling at the front came forward on shaky knees and said, "Sir Oracle." He lowered his head and wanted to kiss Jiang Wang's boots. Jiang Wang was unwilling to accept this and quickly stepped back. He bowed back and said, "Everyone, please rise. I only did what I could. It's not worth such a big gesture. Moreover, I'm not your oracle." As the largest Shinto nation in the modern world, Songtu was not stingy with his miracles. Since ancient times, there had been countless oracles. They were all famous and spread across the grasslands. However, generation after generation, in the prairie, only Tsang Yun was the god emissary. This expert who had not taken action on the river viewing platform wore a cloak all year round and wandered the grassland alone. He fought against disasters and protected herdsmen. His name spread across the grasslands, and many herdsmen worshipped his statue. However, not many people knew his true appearance. It was not strange for the Chaha tribe to have such a misunderstanding. The old man kissed the ground sincerely, then stood up and turned around. He opened his arms and said, "Go back, go back. We oracles do not want to reveal our identities." Obviously, he did not believe that an expert from the outside world would help them. The cloaked expert who would save them in front of the white-haired wind could only be the oracles of the modern world. Hundreds of herdsmen bowed to Jiang Wang in unison. Their sincerity and solemnity could not be interrupted at all. With gratitude or awe on their faces, they dispersed. Jiang Wang shook his head. He had no intention of correcting anything. He patted the red horse that was lying on the ground and comforted it with the help of the Xingxi's staff, making it energetic again. Then he mounted the horse and waved to the old man. "Old man, we will meet again if fate wills it." The red horse moved its hooves and drifted away like a red cloud. The old chief of the Chaha tribe knelt down again and touched the ground with his forehead to send the oracle away. However, he was a little surprised. This oracle seemed different from the priests in the temple. He could not tell exactly what was different. He only felt that it was not so high and not so far. When he looked up, he only saw a pony whizzing past and galloping ahead. "Wu Yin Lanju!" he shouted angrily. But the horse and the girl on it did not stop. He went east. Not long after, he heard the sound of horse hooves. Jiang Wang pressed gently, and the red horse stopped obediently. He turned around and saw that it was indeed the grassland girl with small freckles on her face. She waved at him from afar and galloped over on her little yellow horse. "Miss, what's the matter?" Jiang Wang asked. "I'm here to thank you," Wu Yin Lanju said. Jiang Wang laughed softly. "You have already thanked me." No, no, no." Wu Yin Lanju shook her head quickly. "They are thanking the oracle, thanking God Song Tuesday. But I know that you are not the oracle. I'm not here to thank God. I'm here to thank you." This girl had a healthy and lively aura that made people feel close to her. When the herdsmen knelt down to express their gratitude, she was the only one who stood. Jiang Wang played around with her before. First, he was in a rare state of emptiness. Second, he found her frank and interesting. At this time, he asked with interest, "Why do you think so?" Wu Yin Lanju said directly, "The oracle will protect us, just like herdsmen protect their cattle and sheep. But the oracle will not tolerate me scolding him, just like us herdsmen will not tolerate our cattle and sheep." Under the cloak, Jiang Wang's expression became serious. This girl's attitude toward God was different from others. It was probably because she had read a lot of books. But this was not a safe thing to say. God might not be happy to hear it. Okay, in order to protect her, Jiang Wang changed the topic. "I have received your gratitude." Wu Yin Lanju looked at him boldly and smiled brightly. "Emoi, why don't you take off your cloak? We don't need to cover up too much under the divine light of God Song Tu. God's light can't shine on everyone." Jiang Wang smiled. "Especially for people like me who cover up." Wu Yin Lanju said gloomily, "I just want to know what my benefactor looks like." Jiang Wang tapped his heel, and the date red horse began to trot again. He waved the book in his hand at the young girl. "Read more." about this world, the answers you want to know, are all in the book. Chapter 1292. She looked at the figure in the linen cloak floating away on the red cloud. Wu Yin Lanju pouted. What? His Majesty gives a lot of books to the tribe every year. Look at how you stumble. I've read more books than you. Of course, she couldn't say this to her benefactor. She could only complain in private. Alas, she took another look at his back and turned her horse around dejectedly. She muttered, I thought that if you were good-looking, I would ask you. I have cows, sheep, horses, and ranches. Would you like to stay? If you're not good-looking, I'll give you 5 cows. Alas, you're leaving like this. Am I good-looking or not? As she spoke, she lightly slapped her own mouth. Wu Yin Lanju, Wu Yin Lanju, how can you be so shallow? Then he smiled brightly. Her cows, sheep, and ranches were all saved. She didn't have to worry about finding good-looking men. The future was as bright as the sky at this time. Jiang Wang didn't know that he had avoided a trial for his appearance. He galloped on the endless grassland. He and the date red horse were very carefree. A few days passed like this. When he estimated that he was about to reach the supreme royal court, he found a herd of wild horses and set the date red horse free. He also secretly observed the battle between the date red horse and the horse king. He helped the date red horse a little and witnessed its coronation. Then he left leisurely with his cane. No matter if it was cloudy or sunny, rain or snow, it was a good time to have leisure. He kept going east. When the colorful grassland gradually returned to its green color, he vaguely felt that he was returning to the season. Jiang Wang knew that he was about to reach the center of the eastern grassland. The green sea in autumn was the feedback of the abundant vitality of this place. The flourishing and withered plants were not suitable for the greatest city on the grassland. It was hard to describe the feeling of seeing the supreme royal court for the first time. It was like walking on a boundless road. Suddenly, he looked up and saw the land of God. The continuous tents were like a sea of clouds. The sea of clouds fell on the green sea. The sky blue flag fluttered in the wind, and the eagle soared high in the sky. Gold, silver, and gems decorated this place. This was a golden city. It was glorious, brilliant, and dazzling. The boundless grassland often gave people a feeling of loneliness, because all they could see was a boundless expanse. It was easy for people to feel their own insignificance in such a place. But the moment he saw the supreme royal court, all his loneliness was dispelled. What they saw and felt was the most brilliant world. It was undoubtedly the center of the grassland. You might even feel that it was the center of the world. Jiang Wang looked at the city quietly, imagining how it would fly, how it would sweep across the boundless grassland, and how it would shine in the clear sky for thousands of miles. What a magnificent picture that would be. At this moment, a knight came over on horseback, and they wore leather armor and had scimitars at their waists. Looking at their attire, they were the cavalry of the king's tent that guarded the supreme imperial court. He slowed down when he was still a distance away, so as not to startle the horse, showing his good manners. He asked in a clear voice, "Where do you come from, sir?" However, instead of using moi, he used a more general term guest. Grassland. Grassland. The grassland people were swift and fierce. The tribes were used to attacking each other. It was common for them to draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. For a very long time, the knife was the biggest reason. However, after Jiang Wang entered the prairie in person, everything he saw and experienced was too different from the stereotypical impression that he had heard from others. Like the young herdsman, she was clear-headed, lively, and natural. Like the cavalry of the king's tent. They were the elites of the grassland elites, but they were not arrogant at all. They welcomed a foreign visitor with a smile. The trickle of details reflected the achievements of the current Emperor Mu's governance. Jiang Wang did not mind being interrogated. To enter the supreme royal court, this kind of examination was impossible. He replied, "I'm a foreigner traveling to the grassland. I want to see the greatest city on the grassland. I want to see the sky mirror." "You've made the right choice." The cavalry of the king's tent smiled with honor, but he still asked in a businesslike manner, Do you have a verification report? Who here will vouch for you? Jiang Wang was stunned. I need a local to vouch for me? Verification was an identity document. It recorded one's name, gender, approximate appearance, and where one lived. Verification was a travel certificate. It required the official document of the place of residence to prove it. It recorded one's name, gender, and destination. In addition, when passing through various important checkpoints, one had to affix a seal on the document to prove that they did not sneak in all the way. Their tracks could be checked at any time. Ordinary people traveled everywhere. Without a verification report, it was difficult for them to move an inch. Compared to the travel of ordinary people, it was much simpler for transcendent being cultivators. No matter where they went, as long as they were not too presumptuous, they would not be stopped. However, the Supreme Royal Court was different. No one could behave atrociously here. Before coming to Grassland, Jiang Wang had thought of a way to get a set of identity documents. He was a Confucian scholar from the state of Wei. He was interested in learning and traveled around. However, the local vouch test really stumped him. The cavalry of the king's tent smiled. Because of some well-known reasons, the examination for entering the city is stricter now. Of course, Jiang Wang knew the so-called well-known reasons. The optimism in the other party's words was proof of the strength of this country. The battle in Liyuan City was still ongoing. The state of Jing could intervene at any time. However, when a random cavalryman of the king's tent talked about this matter, it was very casual. Thinking of the high and remote empress voice that he heard on the river viewing platform, Jiang Wang could not help but be in awe. Of course, there were other ways to sneak into the Supreme Royal Court. No matter how strict the king's tent's inspection was, it was impossible for such a big city to be airtight. However, in such a sensitive period, it was undoubtedly asking for trouble. Jiang Wang thought for a moment and said, "Can you help me contact Zhao Ruqing, or maybe Deng Qi, to say that an old friend is visiting? You should know who it is." As an intermansion expert from Tianjiao, who represented the state of Mu in the Battle of the Yellow River, Zhao Ruqing's name obviously carried some weight in the state of Mu. The cavalryman of the king's tent looked at him and asked, "Can you take off your cloak? It's not very convenient." Jiang Wang said, "Do I have to take off?" "Not really. If you're really General Zhao's friend, there's naturally no problem." The cavalryman of the king's tent joked, "I'm just curious. If you look fierce, I'll keep an eye on you. If you look kind, I'll relax a little." Jiang Wang, ? Are you people from the grassland so realistic? No wonder Zhao Ruqing is doing so well here. He's even a general? Let Zhao Ruqing come and pick me up, Jiang Wang said. Unfortunately, the cavalryman of the king's tent said with a smile, "General Zhao is at the front line of Liyuan City, so he can't come and pick you up. Do you have someone else to vouch for you?" Jiang Wang was both surprised and unhappy. He was surprised that Zhao Ruqing was at the front line. That was a battlefield that the state of Jing could enter at any time. The danger was unpredictable. He was unhappy that, since Zhao Ruqing wasn't at the Supreme Imperial Court, this guy in front of him was wasting his breath. The cavalryman of the king's tent could probably feel Jiang Wang's mood, so he hurriedly explained, "I'm not teasing you. It's just that my relative is a close friend of General Zhao. When he heard that you're General Zhao's friend, he felt very close to you, so he made a joke with you." "Is that so?" Jiang Wang asked faintly. "Who's your relative?" The cavalryman of the king's tent rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Yuan Duo, do you know? He and General Zhao are friends of life and death." In the words of the grassland, he's Cha Gong. Thinking of the braided-haired man who almost fought with him on the Taowu Bridge, Jiang Wang curled his lips under the cloak. He asked again, "Is there anyone in General Zhao's family?" The cavalryman of the king's tent smiled. "You must be joking. General Zhao entered the grassland alone and hasn't settled down yet." "Alone in the world?" Jiang Wang didn't say anything and turned to leave. "Hey, aren't you going to enter the city?" The cavalryman of the king's tent asked behind him. Jiang Wang didn't even turn his head. He leaned on the cane in his right hand and shook the book in his left hand, Since my old friend isn't in the city, I'll leave the scenery here for him to enjoy in the future. Chapter 1293. The cloaked figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Another rider galloped over. He wore the standard leather armor and scimitar of the king's tent cavalry. His golden cloak fluttered behind him, embroidered with a thunderbolt imprint. He was a captain. When this person approached, he lowered his head in front of the majestic king's tent cavalry and asked, "Your Highness, is there a problem with this person?" There were only two highnesses in the Mu Empire. They were Emperor Mu's son and daughter. The elder brother was called Helian Zhaotu, and the younger sister was called Helian Yunyan. Therefore, the person who interrogated Jiang Wang just now was a prince of the Mu Empire, Zhao Ming, plotting Wu. Empress Mu did not hide her ambition when she named her son this name. As for naming her daughter Helian Yunyan, it was up to the world to comment. She was a great empress, so she did not care about the gossip of the mediocre. Helian Zhaotu smiled at the question. What's wrong with the number one inner residence in the world looking for an old friend? Oh, the cavalry general raised his eyebrows. He's Jiang Wang. Most likely, Helian Zhaotu said casually. He probably guessed that it was me. To be able to escape from Zhao Xinyang, this person is not simple. I'm afraid he didn't just escape. Helian Zhaotu said. Zhao Xinyang is still nowhere to be seen. The cavalry general paused. There's a strong person behind him. With the cooperation of Pingping country and Mu country, Chao Jia was able to quietly change generals. If one were to say that the state of Qi could deploy another Zhenren, other than Shi Mingjin and Wen Yinyu, without anyone noticing, then one would be underestimating the intelligence capability of the state of Jing. Therefore, if Jiang Wang escaped with the help of a strong person, it must be someone other than Qi. Who knows? Helian Zhaotu thought for a while and said, let's not make this public. It's good for us if Qi can negotiate a good price. The cavalry general said, Zhao Xinyang is still missing, but he came to Mu. Are you trying to divert the trouble to someone else? Don't think too much. Helian Zhaotu glanced at him with a smile that was not a smile. So what if Jingguo really believes that Zhao Xinyang was killed by us? If he wants to attract trouble, let him do it. Between us and Jing country, we don't lack one or two debts. Why don't you do me a favor that costs you nothing? The cavalry general scratched his head and chuckled. I was just thinking that since he is an old friend of Zhao Ruqing, then he must be on His Highness Yun's side. With his talent and background, he may be a strong ally in the future. So, remember, although my sister and I are competing, we are not enemies. I, Helian Zhaotu, do not need to suppress anyone to gain an advantage. The better my sister performs, the stronger her influence, and the more dazzling her abilities are. When I ascend the throne in the future, there will be no dispute. Helian Zhaotu turned his horse around and said indifferently, what I want to fight for is not just that one position. Jiang Wang didn't care about other people's grand plans. He was only keenly aware that the cavalryman from the king's tent who interrogated him was not a simple person. He was too lazy to play a guessing game. He just left. He didn't care about the other party's identity or thoughts. Causing less trouble was the first goal of his trip. Since Zhao Ruqing was not in Mu and it was inconvenient for him to get close to the battlefield, he could only give up. He directly turned to Chu and continued his journey to Xinkong Temple. The grassland had its own scenery, and he had his own journey. With a cloak, hemp clothes, and a dragon-headed staff, he walked from day to night. The grassland's night was so quiet. There was nothing between heaven and earth, and the stars and moon were clear and bright. Jiang Wang looked up at the starry sky and felt his yearning. He had already achieved the divine palace and could build the starlight holy tower at any time. He could send his voice to the universe from the distant starry sky, the voice of the Tao. From a certain point of view, he could also shape the starlight in the endless galaxy. This desire to climb to a higher place was simply too heart-wrenching. However, he could only endure it. Under the 5 prefectures' glory, the 5 prefectures' Xi had almost recovered. Now he was exploring the inner rooms of the 5th inner prefecture, looking for hidden treasures and understanding himself. He had to achieve the perfect divine palace before he could erect his starlight tower in peak condition. Today, he had the qualifications to pursue even greater achievements. Sitting under the bright night sky of the grassland, Jiang Wang divided his attention and entered the great illusionary land. The benefits that Cheng Gengsheng had asked for days had finally arrived. In the galaxy's space, the two of them were still sitting opposite each other. Cheng Gengsheng slapped out 2 jade slips with an arrogant face. A-grade upper soul Taoist technique, 5 senses hell. The secret technique, Fury Flame, of the Imperial Treasury is of the same origin as the Jealousy Flame you learned before. How is it? He asked. Are you satisfied? These 2 Taoist techniques were simply perfect. The A-grade lower soul, Jealous Flame, only had the cultivation threshold of the soaring dragon realm. In the battles that Jiang Wang was currently experiencing, it was simply useless. However, Jiang Wang would not forget the exquisiteness of this Taoist technique. This Fury Flame and Jealous Flame belonged to the same system, but its grade was 1 level higher. With Jiang Wang's current cultivation realm, it was perfect for him to use. Moreover, with Jealous Flame as a foundation, the control and use of Fury Flame would not be too complicated. With Jiang Wang's current cultivation realm, he should not spend too much effort on A-grade middle soul Taoist techniques. Under the condition that the quality was guaranteed, the easier it was to master, the better. As for A-grade upper soul 5 senses hell, it was even more surprising. Apart from self-created Taoist techniques, Jiang Wang could now master soul Taoist techniques that were beyond his realm. His soul power was far superior to cultivators of the same realm, but he had never had many ways to use it. He was sitting on a mountain of treasures. Until now, all he had was the eye of Qianyang and half of the single rider formation map that he had cut off from North Xiang. With his 5 senses hell, he would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Ah Sheng, my brother. Jiang Wang looked at him sincerely and reached out to collect the 2 jade tokens. You are too considerate. These 2 Taoist techniques could be said to be completely compatible with Jiang Wang's current situation. To ask for benefits from Qi Ting, and even to this degree of tailor-made, he had definitely put a lot of thought into it. At the very least, he had used the strength of 2 tails of fat. This was a measurement method created by Su Xiangqian to measure Cheng Gengsheng's intelligence. For example, the strength of 1 tail of fat was the kind that could overturn the Jubao merchants. Usually, when he was fooling people and scamming them for information, it was about the strength of 1 tail of fat. It had to be said that he was quite sick, but it was widely used among Li Longchuan, Yin Fu, and the other bad friends, and everyone was very enthusiastic about it. Cheng Gengsheng glanced at him and sneered. If you were sincere, you should be holding my hand right now, not the technique. It's not too late now. Jiang Wang reached out with a smile, but this fatty slapped his hand away. You wish. Do you think my 14th brother has no objections? Jiang Wang? Chapter 1294. By the way, in the Xinghe Pavilion, Cheng Gengsheng said, when you go to the Xiankong Temple, remember to go around the Xingyue Plain. Jiang Wang frowned and asked why. There was no reason not to go around the Xingyue Plain. He still had a chat with Master Guan Yin, and the fiery bone lotus needed to accumulate astral power. Something big will happen over there. Zhongxian Sheng only said this one sentence and didn't say anything else. It must have involved the secrets of the military hall. Strictly speaking, with Jiang Wang's current rank and position, he was qualified to know the secrets. However, he was alone now. As a disciple of a military family, Cheng Gengsheng was aware of this. Jiang Wang thought about the geography of the Xingyue Plain and the situation of the Xishan Kingdom and the Eastern Sun Kingdom, and he could roughly guess what was going on. It seemed that the negotiations between Qi and Jing did not go well. Was Qi too ruthless, or was Jingguo too conceited? Was Jingguo really going to fight on 2 fronts? Was he going to fight against 2 overlords at the same time? Jiang Wang thought for a moment and said, I took a detour and concealed my identity for the sake of national affairs. It's quite difficult. Now that I've reached the Xingyue Plain, I still have to take a detour. Shouldn't the higher-ups give me some compensation? Chung Gongsheng looked at him in shock. Ha, I'm just kidding, Jiang Wang laughed dryly. Then you're quite serious about it, Chung Gongsheng said indifferently. I wouldn't have known if I didn't come here. The scenery on the grassland is quite good, Jiang Wang said evasively. I saw the Supreme Royal Court from afar. It's really magnificent. Chung Gongsheng followed his words and asked, What's wrong? Your sworn brother didn't take you around the Supreme Royal Court? He's in Liyuan City, Jiang Wang said. No matter how smart Chung Gongsheng was, and no matter how terrifying Jiang Wang's fighting talent was, they were just pawns in the game of the world overlords. They were not even important pawns. There were many things that they could not interfere with. This topic was really not good to continue, so Zhong Xiansheng changed the topic and said, I suddenly remembered something. That Gu Shi you mentioned last time, I recently dug up his information and got a rough idea of him. There have been too many things that I almost forgot about it. During this period of time, he first had to help Jiang Wang clear his name of treason. It was not easy for him to fight Zhang Weiyu and win a beautiful battle. Soon after, something happened to Jiang Wang. There was only an urgent letter that was sent to him. Was Geng Sheng. His Xiao Sun was guilty of the devil crime. His was the way was King Sheng. Was Geng Wang s. The way was? Was he to the Jiang Yuang s. Of the was of the dynasty, to Jiang family s was to's, this and the family. He was to Ning to himself, to the clan to of Jiang Wei, to himself, to be to Jiang he was. With so many things going on, he was indeed too busy. Jiang Wang was a little embarrassed. He said enthusiastically, Brother Sheng, it's been hard on you. Sigh. Chung Gongsheng sighed. I've been having backaches recently. I don't know if it's because I've overworked myself. Jiang Wang was stunned. He said softly, It's not my place to interfere with your and Jiang Shixi's family matters. What are you thinking? Chung Gongsheng slammed the stone table. He was furious. It's all because of you. Then you must try my exclusive massage technique. Jiang Wang stood up decisively. He went behind Chung Gongsheng and massaged his shoulders attentively. Huang Shelley has something called the 24 hands. I secretly learned it when we fought. I'll help you loosen your muscles and bones and make you feel comfortable all over. If Huang Shelley knew that her 24 hands of salvation were used by Jiang Wang to massage someone else's shoulders, she would definitely not be able to hold on to her pestle. She would definitely break Jiang Wang's finger bones, unless it was for her to massage him. No. Chung Gongsheng pretended to stop him. How can I, Chung Gongsheng, be worthy of being massaged by the world's #1 intermansion? Jiang Wang sensibly massaged his back. Yes, of course. Brother Sheng, you have to worry about me every day. You must take care of your body. These few 100 pounds of flesh of yours are the manifestation of wisdom. It's a treasure of qi. You must not lose it. Please take care of yourself. Chung Gongsheng snorted with satisfaction. Whereas I just now? Gu Shi, Jiang Wang reminded him. Gu Shi is the #1 master of Zheng. Chung Gongsheng enjoyed it very much. He said lazily, This person is chivalrous and has the reputation of being a hero of the world. He is also a direct descendant of Zheng's royal family, but he has no interest in the throne. He does not participate in the official path and does not fight for the royal family's resources. When he was young, he traveled the world alone and fought for justice. He helped the weak and got a good reputation. He changed his name to Gu Shi because he regarded righteousness as his teacher. When his father was critically ill and wanted to pass the throne to him, he left the banquet and refused to accept the imperial edict. He said that he was only a solitary sword and did not have the ability to shoulder the responsibility of the country. I have an elder brother above and a virtuous nephew below. I do not accept them. Those were the original words. Later, when the new emperor ascended the throne, he went to the country alone to prevent people from making an issue out of him. He waited for the new emperor to consolidate his power before he was willing to return. He did not use any of Zheng's royal family's resources and cultivated to become a perfected person by himself. He was indeed a rare man with extraordinary talent and unique personality. In terms of seniority, the current emperor of Zheng was Gu Shi's nephew. However, although he was Zheng's #1 expert, he did not care about anything. He was not conferred by the Zheng's emperor nor recruited by other countries. He roamed outside all year round and played around. He would only return to live for a period of time after 8 or 10 years. It was difficult for someone from a small country to achieve insightful truth. Just think about Ji Cheng, who was stopped by God arrival. It was not just the path itself that was difficult. Recalling Gu Shi's slap, Jiang Wang could not help but say, "He is indeed an extraordinary man. For now, let's just treat him as a good person who upholds justice." Cheng Geng-sheng said. "What do you mean?" Jiang Wang asked. "Although he has a good reputation, Cheng Geng-sheng clicked his tongue. "You were even rumored to be a traitor and a thief who colluded with the devil. Now, the righteous man of the country, De Qi, has been wronged and disappeared in Tianjiao." He laughed and said, "It's easy to manipulate. When it comes to behavior, it's not about the heart. When it comes to the heart, how can anyone be perfect?" Jiang Wang said, "If we have to guess whether there are other motives behind everything, then it's hard to trust anyone. Of course. That's why I said, let's treat him as a good person for now." Cheng Geng-sheng said nonchalantly, "Why don't we talk about his motive for saving you after we get to know each other better? If we don't meet again, then there's no need to mention it." Jiang Wang said, "I'm very grateful to him for saving me. If there's a chance in the future, I'll try my best to repay him. As for what kind of person he is, I've only met him once. I don't dare to judge, and I don't want to guess. So let's just wait and see." Cheng Geng-sheng laughed. "At least we're on the same page." "Yes." Jiang Wang laughed. Most of the time, they might be two completely different people. However, they were both clear-headed and knew that they were not the only people in the world. They knew that their life standards were not the only standard in life. They were walking in the same direction, but they were not blindly following each other. Both of them were walking on their own paths. After leaving the great illusionary realm, Jiang Wang was somewhat moved and looked up at the sky. The long river of stars seemed to be stirring up some kind of ripple. For some reason, he recalled the celebration of the Void Continent. Chapter 1295. Perhaps the Nether Totem was the dream of the entire Qinghua tribe, but this dream did not belong to Qing Hua Qiming. His grandfather was the hero of the tribe, his father was the shame of the tribe, and his adoptive father was the strongest shaman of the Qinghua tribe in history who had completed the Nether Totem. They had all died because of this. The Qinghua tribe was crushed by an impossible dream. And Qing Hua Qiming was only a youth who had lost his father, grandfather, and adoptive father. Because of these repeated losses, he developed a fear of the nether heaven and did not dare to go near it. Thus, the tribe saw him as a disgrace and called him coward. Although he had inherited the position of shaman, he was not respected. Jiang Wang never understood what Qing Hua Qiming was thinking when he jumped down from the nether heaven. Their interaction was so short. Other than the fiery bone lotus on his back, there seemed to be no trace left behind. But Qing Hua Qiming's jump would occasionally appear in his mind when he looked up at the starry sky. Some people were born strong, while others might never be able to defeat mediocrity. But under the same starry sky, did they have the same right to live? Or was it natural selection, where only the fittest could survive? This was the question that Qing Hua Qiming left in Jiang Wang's mind. Chu country was considered the border between the north and east regions. It was also an independent country and had disputes with Zheng all year round. Of course, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the friction between the two countries was only on the surface. In reality, there had never been any major movements. It could be said that they were covering for each other. Chu and Zheng, these two countries for many years, could be considered to be the three overlords of Jing, Qi, and Mu. Their days were actually pretty good. Speaking of Chu, Jiang Wang's first impression was that Chu country's border general was assassinated by No Door to Hell. This was Yin Guan's first mission after establishing No Door to Hell. At that time, it shook the East regions, and no door to hell became famous. After that, it was only when Yin Guan became a god that Chu country took down the wanted poster. Stepping on Chu country's soil, a sense of security arose spontaneously. Here, they were back in the East regions. Although the grassland was safe and comfortable, it was not as safe as in the East regions. After all, his official position and title were the most useful in the East regions. However, when he thought about it carefully, other than Qi, he didn't seem to have a peaceful life in the Eastern region. It was early August when they left the Eastern domain. When they returned to the Eastern region, it was already September. One of Lindsay's 7 sceneries, red maple clouds, was already past its peak season. In the short span of a month, he had gone through several life and death situations. He had taken a huge detour, passing through the northern region and circling back to the eastern region. He could not help but sigh with emotion. The injuries on his body were completely healed at this time, and his body and mind had recovered to their peak condition. He didn't know if it was because he had been using the 5 prefectures' simultaneous glory to recover himself, but the Rui immortal robe had also recovered. Finally, he didn't have to look like a beggar, wearing rags on the inside and coarse linen on the outside. Even the dragon-head walking stick would be regarded as a dog-beating stick. Jiang Wang sometimes thought that even if Qi Ting didn't have any requests for him, he wouldn't have exposed his identity in such a state. This small city within the borders of Chu country was called Jade Light. In the early years, there was a huge jade mine nearby. Mining, selling, carving, many people depended on this place for a living. Those miners and merchants gathered here for a long time, and slowly, a city was formed. The name Jade Light first referred to the radiance of jade, and then it became Jade Light. Jiang Wang found a tavern that was pleasing to the eye and took a table to himself. He warmed up a pot of wine and ordered 2 caddies of sliced mutton. He listened to the discussions of the people and the various lives. Some talked about domestic trivialities, and some talked about the situation in the eastern region. This city, which was mainly formed by miners, was not as rough as imagined. On the contrary, it was warm and comfortable. Maybe it was because jade nourished people, or maybe it was because after the jade mine was exhausted, the people here changed several times, and the whole city developed other industries. With his current cultivation, ordinary wine could no longer intoxicate people, but Jiang Wang was eating mutton lazily at this moment. He drank 1 or 2 mouthfuls from time to time, and he also felt a little tipsy. From environment to himself, he was in a safe state, and this made him feel relaxed. From the vast and sparsely populated grassland, he returned to the densely populated eastern region. The vastness of nature and the prosperity of the human world made him feel comfortable. "Sir, what would you like to order?" "A pot of wine and a plate of fennel beans." This conversation attracted Jiang Wang's attention. With his current control of the Tao of sound, as long as he heard a voice once, it would be difficult for him to forget it, especially after activating the immortal sound state. The voice he heard a long time ago would also obediently provide information, because all sounds are in the same place. He didn't look back, and his eating and drinking movements didn't change at all. He just silently activated the immortal sound state. "Sir, what kind of wine would you like?" "The best." This person who just entered the restaurant was a little taciturn, but Jiang Wang had already caught it. The sound was in his ears, and the relevant information had already appeared. Tracing back to the origin, the last time the two of them talked was at the battlefield of Qiyang in Redtail County. At that time, this person only said one sentence, "Got it, thank you." Jiang Wang silently drank the wine in the cup and ate the last few slices of mutton. The waiter, who had been paying attention to this side, quickly came forward. "Sir, what would you like to add?" Jiang Wang shook his head as a sign of refusal. He had already paid for the wine and meat, so he casually put on the cloak that was standing on the corner of the table and stood up. As he put away the dragon-headed walking stick that was leaning against his leg, he took out the sheed Sauvignon Blanc from the storage box, held in his hand, and walked toward the customer who just entered the restaurant. Seeing this scene, The waiter shrank back 2 steps. The people in the restaurant were still eating and drinking, chatting and laughing. But gradually, some people realized that something was wrong and looked over. Only the ordinary-looking young man, sitting sideways across from Jiang Wang, leisurely picked up a fennel bean and threw it into his mouth. He didn't even turn his head and only asked casually, "What's the matter?" After experiencing so much, he had cultivated an extraordinary aura. He wasn't as lazy as before, nor was he as hurried as he was when they met on Haimen Island. He was quite calm, as if he was indifferent to the situation. Everyone had their own fortuitous encounters, and everyone was growing. Yang Xuanzi, "Oh, Yang Xuanzi," Jiang Wang said, "you did a great thing in Zhaoheng City. You caused me so much trouble." His words had already revealed his identity. Yang Xuanzi suddenly turned his head. The moment he turned his head, his eyes shone with a brilliant golden light and actually produced raging flames. The raging flames instantly covered the distance between him and Jiang Wang. The flame snake burned fiercely, and it seemed to want to devour someone. Jiang Wang only stretched out his hand, and the suppression from the true samadhi fire extinguished the raging flames all over the place, eliminating a disaster that might have affected the entire restaurant. But Yang Xuanzi's figure had already disappeared. Jiang Wang stretched out his hand and grabbed in the air. A bit of the remaining flames he grasped turned into the shape of a small blade of grass, and lowered his head to guide the way. After this period of combing through Taoist techniques, his Taoist technique tracing had improved. Although it still couldn't be considered an excellent tracking technique, it could still provide clues at a time when he had grasped a certain trace. The waiter only saw the raging flames in the sky. Before he could panic, he saw them being extinguished by a hand. And the linen-clothed man who had eaten the mutton before making a move had already stepped out of the restaurant. Chapter 1296. Jiang Wang didn't have a clear understanding of Yang Xuanzi's strength. After all, they had never really fought before. Back in Songfeng City, they were just discussing business. They only exchanged a few words on the battlefield of Chiang, and only glanced at each other on Haimen Island. Since Yang Xuanzi was able to kill Huang Yixing, he should be at the outer tower level. But it was impossible for him to be a god. Jiang Wang had just acquired the Red Heart Theurgy and became the divine palace with the strength of the world's #1 inner palace. He had recuperated in the cleansing moon nunnery for a long time and walked around the grassland. His injuries had healed, and he was full of energy. He was at his peak in all aspects. He was invincible in the inner tower. As long as he didn't encounter people at the level of Dozhao or Yunganzuan, he could easily defeat them. He had killed all 4 of the Theurgy outer tower members of the evil destroying army. Therefore, he wanted to attack Yang Xuanzi as soon as he saw him. He didn't even need to test him. This was the embodiment of his confidence. Yang Xuanzi ran away as soon as he saw him. He naturally knew the power of the world's #1 inner palace. Jiang Wang stepped out of the tavern and shattered the blue clouds. Although he was wearing a cloak, he still felt like an immortal when he stepped out. In the blink of an eye, he followed the guidance of his recollection and crossed a few streets before crashing into an alley. It was a dead end. At the end of the alley, Yang Xuanzi, who was wearing a silk robe and dressed like a merchant, slowly turned around and looked at Jiang Wang. His eyes, which were flowing with golden flames, were unusually calm. Jiang Wang tilted his body slightly. A figure came from behind him and blocked his way. This person was tall and wore a mask with a human face. It was completely black, except for a white door painted on his forehead. Inside the door were 2 blood-red words, Mount Tai. Jiang Wang looked up and saw a person squatting on the wall on the left side of the alley. He looked down at him with cold eyes. He also wore a black mask of the same style, but the words on it were different. It was Wheel. There was no door to hell. King Mount Tai, King Wheel. You came at a bad time. Yang Xuanzi looked at him and said indifferently, I have a business appointment today. It was indeed a bad time. They ran into each other in the tavern and chased after him, but he was surrounded. Jiang Wang couldn't help but sigh at his luck. No story without coincidences. Jiang Wang smiled and put away the cloak that covered his face. Although its effect on the battle was negligible, he wanted to display his strongest state now. Every single one of the Yama Kings of the Gate of Hell was at the peak of the outer sect. They were experts who had walked on the edge of life and death. They could not be viewed as ordinary outer sect experts. These people were able to fight head-on with geniuses from the outer sect like Do, Zhao, and Zhong Xianzun. Back then, the old man of the heavenly mansion had fought against 3 opponents at the inner mansion realm, leaving behind an immortal legend. At that time, those who fought with him were all extremely famous outer building stage powerhouses, just like the King of Hell who had no door to hell. Jiang Wang planned to challenge this legend today. He was already recognized as the strongest inner mansion realm expert in the world, but could he be like Wang Yiwu, who broke through the limit of the Ascension realm and become the strongest inner mansion realm expert in history? Could he carve an immortal monument in the cultivation world? It's fate that we met, Jiang Wang said in a relaxed tone. He raised his sword and stepped forward, his hair fluttering in the wind. Come. He had traveled thousands of miles around the grassland to study and experience, recuperate and nurture his sword. Now he wanted to show off his skills. Who in the world would dare to challenge him as an inner mansion realm outer sect expert? At this critical moment, come what? A voice said. A handsome man with long hair that draped over his shoulders stood beside the tall King Taishan as he spoke. Yang Xuanzi heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't expect Jiang Wang to be so eager to fight and attack first when surrounded by him and 2 other Yama Kings. It wasn't like an inner mansion realm cultivator at all. To be honest, it was advantageous for Jiang Wang to fight in the state of Chu. Such a small country in the eastern domain wouldn't dare to not give face to Qi. Once the battle broke out, if it wasn't resolved quickly and was discovered by the experts of the state of Chu, what awaited him and the 2 Yama Kings was that they would be surrounded and attacked. But now that King Qingguang had appeared, there was nothing to say. No matter how talented or terrifying Jiang Wang was, he was no match for King Qingguang. He wouldn't even be able to make a sound. Jiang Wang was silent for a moment, then said to Yingguan, "Shall we chat?" Yang Xuanzi said indifferently, "There's nothing to chat about." "Sure," Yingguan said with a smile from the other end of the alley. Yang Xuanzi. The location of the chat was in the courtyard next to the alley. They jumped over the wall and entered. Yang Xuanzi, King Taishan, and King Zhuanluan remained in the alley. As they flew into the courtyard, Jiang Wang said, "Don't kill anyone." Yingguan retracted his fingers and glanced at him, then said with a smile, "Just temporarily. Do you think I like killing people that much?" There were only 2 maidservants in the courtyard. At this moment, their backs were facing them. Yingguan had used a special hand seal to restrain them, preventing them from speaking or moving. "If you really want to kill someone, I can't stop you. I'm only stopping you from killing someone you don't need to kill." Jiang Wang casually blocked the voices of the 2 maidservants to prevent them from hearing something they shouldn't have. He said, "From the looks of it, Jade Luster City isn't your base. If there was a need, a person like Yingguan would definitely not mind having his hands stained with blood. And if Jade Luster City was the next base of operations for the state of Hell, Yingguan would not allow the possibility of his whereabouts being exposed. Anyone who saw him would die. Therefore, Jiang Wang said that the state of Hell was likely just passing by. Yingguan never minded how others viewed him, so he did not comment. He only asked, "What do you want to talk to me about?" Jiang Wang said directly, "I want to capture Yang Xuanzi and bring him back." Yang Xuanzi was the true culprit of Huang Yixing's case. Capturing him was firstly to fulfill his duty as a 4th-grade blue medal, and secondly, to defend his reputation. Although Cheng Gengsheng had already reversed public opinion, only by capturing Yang Xuanzi could the case be considered closed. Only then could it be said that the coffin was sealed. Impossible. Yingguan rejected him directly. "He's a big client of ours." "How much did he pay?" Jiang Wang said in an imposing manner. "I'll pay double." Yingguan looked at him with a faint smile. "I know you can't afford it with your family's wealth." Jiang Wang was momentarily stifled. It had been a long time since he had been despised for his wealth. He clenched his teeth and said, Yin Fu is my good friend. Oh, the Beishire Yin clan, Ingguan said indifferently. Borrowing money to buy a thief? As expected of the head of the Yellow River. The way you handle cases is different from an ordinary blue metal. You have broadened my horizons. Jiang Wang was somewhat embarrassed. He sighed. Just pretend I didn't say anything. That's right. Ingguan nodded. Besides, the gateless hell is also very principled. Even if you can afford it, we won't let you arrest him. Jiang Wang thought for a moment, and then asked again, What business does he have with you? Ingguan smiled. This is a secret of the gateless hell. Only the core members of the organization are allowed to know about it. Are you sure you want to hear it? Then forget it. Jiang Wang refused decisively. Think about it again. Ingguan smiled. There are still 3 positions open. King Sondi, King Pingding, and King Bianqing. If you're here, you can choose from them. If you don't think it's auspicious, I can also arrange for you to switch places with the other Yama Kings. Jiang Wang raised his eyebrows. I'm a 3rd grade golden melon warrior of the Dachi. I'm also a 4th grade blue medal holder. You want me to become an assassin with you? It's not shameful to earn some extra money. Ingguan smiled again. At the very least, you'll have more confidence the next time you want to throw money at someone. Isn't that right? Jiang Wang suddenly had the urge to flip the table. He had to give up because the other party was too strong. Chapter 1297. Think about it. Ingguan struck while the iron was hot. I can help you conceal your identity well. Back in the courtyard of an unknown residence, the 2 men who had taken over the place were discussing the matter of joining the gang. Ingguan seemed particularly enthusiastic today. Of course, this wasn't the first time he had extended an invitation, and it wasn't the first time Jiang Wang had rejected his offer either. Jiang Wang muttered softly, If you don't want anyone to know, then don't do it in the first place. If you don't want anyone to know, then just kill them. Ingguan reminded him. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. That's because you haven't killed all of them. Jiang Wang didn't want to offend Ingguan, but seeing how insistent Ingguan was, he had no choice but to be more direct. I don't want to live a precarious life and be chased all over the place. Ingguan was puzzled. Aren't you being chased all over the place right now? Jiang Wang. Ingguan guided him patiently. If you join the gang, then you can contact me directly the next time you meet someone like Zhao Xinyang. I'll gather everyone and help you clean up the mess. Oh, Jiang Wang asked, what if I meet Pei Xinghe? Ingguan responded frankly. Then you won't be able to contact me. That's why. Jiang Wang's voice was laced with regret. Hell isn't suitable for me. In truth, both of them knew that the reason Jiang Wang wasn't willing to join Hell wasn't because the position of King Yin Luo was auspicious, or how much money he earned, or how dangerous it was rather. It was because Jiang Wang didn't agree with Hell's philosophy, nor did he agree with Ingguan's style of doing things. All right, Ingguan didn't mind, and he changed the topic. Do you admit that I've let you off the hook today? There's no point in saying that. Jiang Wang said, if you hadn't come today, then your Hell might have to recruit new members. In other words, I'm the one who let them off the hook. Is that so? Ingguan didn't deny it. Unfortunately, I'm here. Jiang Wang thought for a moment, and then finally admitted honestly, you're right. It's good that you admit it. Ingguan smiled. Just a token of appreciation. Give me a few dozen primordial stones. Money to buy your life, money to buy your life, money to pass through, or money to keep your mouth shut. You can interpret it however you like. Jiang Wang looked at him and said, even if we're not friends, we're at least acquaintances. Isn't it inappropriate to blackmail me the moment we meet? Of course, we're very familiar with each other. Ingguan smiled and said, if we met under other circumstances, I wouldn't find trouble with you. We could even sit down and have a cup of tea and chat. But, Jiang Tianjiao, just like what you said just now, you almost made Doorless Hell recruit new members. As the leader of Doorless Hell, how can I just stand by and watch? I didn't even touch their hair. Jiang Wang was very indignant. He paused for a moment and said, does bragging count? Ingguan dismissed it with a smile. Jiang Wang had no choice but to fork out the money. He hadn't caught Yang Xuanzi and had even been blackmailed, which made him extremely resentful. As he took out the primordial stones, he said, "You weren't like this before. The organization has grown and is short of money everywhere." Ingguan counted seriously. There were a total of 10 primordial stones, which met the minimum standard of dozens of pieces. He couldn't help but sigh. "Go that way, and I'll pretend I never saw you. You extorted my primordial stones, but you still look like I took advantage of you. What's the meaning of this?" Jiang Wang was so angry that he gritted his teeth, but he was still rational and knew that he couldn't beat him. He put on his cloak, walked out of the house, and headed out of the city. "I'd better go to Xiankong Temple quickly. I don't want to stay in this sad place for long." Watching Jiang Wang's back disappear, Ingguan shook his head with some pity and turned to leave, returning to the alley. If Jiang Wang's reputation of being in cahoots with demons was confirmed, and the world hated him, there might be a possibility of him joining Doorless Hell. Otherwise, with Jiang Wang's personality, he would never change his choice. Speaking of which, when they first met in Yugua, he felt that this person was extraordinary, but he really didn't expect that this person could reach this point. It was really amazing. When he returned to the alley, King Taishan was still at the entrance, the Chakravarti King was still squatting on the wall, and Yang Xuanzi was still at the end of the alley. Ingguan looked directly at Yang Xuanzi and went straight to the point. "I just saved you from the Chi's third stage Golden Melon Warrior, Jiang Wang. You have to pay extra for this." The Chakravarti King looked at his leader and didn't say anything. The current King Qingguang was very different from the King Qingguang who had established the organization in the Broken Soul Gorge. At that time, Ingguan didn't have such a Philistine side. After all, no money could stop a hero. Developing peripheral forces, building an intelligence network, establishing strongholds in various places. Every place needed resources to fill. Of course, this side of King Qingguang also added a bit of humanity to his powerful and cold image. The Chakravarti King thought silently. This might prove that King Qingguang had taken a lot of steps forward after refining negative energy and achieving God's arrival. Yang Xuanzi didn't know Ingguan well enough, so he was stunned. "Where is he?" "You don't have to worry about that. I have my own way of dealing with it," Ingguan said coldly. "Anyway, he can't threaten you now. You killed him?" Yang Xuanzi asked. "You want me to kill him?" Ingguan asked in return, and then said, "This price is not cheap. Zhao Xian can't compare to his weight in qi." "No need." Yang Xuanzi shook his head. "Then let's settle the bill first." Not long after, Yang Xuanzi left the alley alone. King Taishan, who stayed in the alley, said, "Where did this kid get so many treasures?" "Who knows?" Ingguan put away the storage box with satisfaction. He only cared about whether the money and the goods could be settled. He didn't care about anything else. The Chakravarti King, who was squatting on the wall, said, "It's probably something like the Restoration Treasure Vault. A rotten ship still has 3 pounds of nails. After all, he's a prince of a fallen country. Why don't we just rob him?" The new King Taishan said, "Compared to helping him deal with the officials of Qi, isn't it easier to get rid of him? And it's less troublesome." Ingguan looked at him indifferently and said, "We're assassins, not robbers. What's the difference?" King Taishan didn't quite understand. Killing and robbing are the same. We don't need their permission to rob, and it's the same for us to kill. Credibility, Ingguan said. If you want to develop and expand, there'll be endless business. You must have credibility. You can gain temporary benefits by taking advantage of others, but you'll destroy the reputation of no door to hell. Why do you care about reputation? King Taishan laughed. After today, we don't know if there'll be a tomorrow. Aren't we just looking for temporary gratification? Convincing others was actually the most difficult thing, because everyone had their own opinions. Ingguan didn't explain further. He only said, "Just remember what I said." After saying that, he turned and left. His attitude was a little arrogant, and it made King Taishan very uncomfortable. How could anyone who could become the king of hell be weak? Although his eyes were gloomy, he didn't dare to say anything. The Chakravarti King, who was squatting on the wall, suddenly asked, "Do you know how the previous King Taishan died?" "How'd he die?" King Taishan asked. The Chakravarti king didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "If you say something you shouldn't, you'll die. If King Qin Guang thinks that you might say something you shouldn't, you'll die too." He smiled. "Consider it a piece of advice from your senior." After saying that, he fell backward and disappeared. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.